Chapter 891. When Yetian and the others were about to leave, a figure appeared. It was the Divine Lord of the Dragon Rebel clan, Ni Jiaming. Divine Lord, Ni Chiefing looked at Ni Jiaming in shock, as if he had been greatly frightened. He couldn't speak for a while. The news that Ni Jiaming was going to leave the ancestral land where the Dragon Rebel clan had lived for hundreds of thousands of years was so shocking that Ni Chiefing couldn't react in time. Nyetian and Jean de Bayo were also stunned. Among the people present, only Nyetian and Jean de Bayo knew Ni Jiaming's real identity. The others were all in a coma when Ni Jiaming regained his memory. If other members of the Dragon Rebel clan left the ancestral land, it wouldn't be a big deal. But Ni Jiaming was the Divine Lord, the reincarnation of the Black Dragon Demon Saint. How could he leave the ancestral land? Divine Lord, you can't be serious, right? It took Ni Chiefing a long time to come to himself. Seeing Ni Jiaming's serious face, his expression changed and became gloomy. He knew Ni Jiaming's character very well. Although Ni Jiaming was usually very easygoing, he wouldn't change his mind once he made up his mind. First Elder, I've made up my mind. Ni Jiaming nodded and said, I don't want to be the Divine Lord at all. Besides, the biggest enemy of the Dragon Rebel clan has been eliminated. It's enough to have you and my father in the clan. They don't need me anymore. Divine Lord, Ni Chiefing's old face was extremely gloomy. He said, You're the Divine Lord of the Dragon Rebel clan. This can't be changed. Even if the Soul Splitter is eliminated, you can't leave the ancestral land. Why? Ni Jiaming frowned. He seemed to be a little angry. Because you are. Ni Chiefing was so excited that he almost told the truth, but he held it back. If he was careless and triggered Ni Jiaming's memory from his previous life, it would be terrible. Although the Soul Splitter was eliminated, the vanishing shadow inhibition still existed in the members of the Dragon Rebel clan. Divine Lord, you can't leave the ancestral land. I'll call the chieftain. Ni Chiefing knew he couldn't persuade Ni Jiaming. He thought for a while and said, No, I have to call Zichen over. At this moment, even if Nin came over, he couldn't change Ni Jiaming's decision. Ni Jiaming had only been afraid of one person since he was young, and that was Ni Zichen. Only by calling Ni Zichen over might there be a chance to persuade Ni Jiaming. Teacher, you don't have to persuade him. Just as Ni Chiefing finished speaking, a crisp voice rang out and a beautiful figure appeared. It was Ni Zichen. Ni Chiefing looked at Ni Zichen and was slightly stunned. He said in surprise, Zichen, do you want the Sacred Lord to leave the ancestral land? Yes. Ni Zichen nodded slightly. His delicate features revealed a touch of indifference. I will leave with Jiaming. Let's leave together. Ni Chiefing cried out, his voice turning sharp. Ni Jiaming had yet to persuade him, but Ni Zichen also wanted to leave. How could this be? Zichen, you... Ni Chiefing was Zichen's teacher. His voice was filled with anger, and he almost roared. Teacher, without waiting for Ni Chiefing to finish, Ni Zichen interrupted him and said, Jianming cannot stay here. He must leave. I will definitely find a way to cure him. Ni Zichen knew Ni Jiaming's true identity, but she had never regarded him as the Qianlong Demon Saint. She only saw him as her younger brother. When Ni Jiaming reached the age of 16, the memories of his previous life would awaken. This was something that couldn't be stopped. It was the same for every generation of Qianlong Demon Saint. Ni Zichen didn't want to see her younger brother die, so she had to find a way to break the absolute shadow restriction for Ni Jiaming. This was the reason why Ni Zichen chose to become an alchemist. Since she was 6 years old, she knew that Ni Jiaming would die. From then on, she swore that she must find a way to break the absolute shadow restriction. She did this not only for Ni Jiaming, but also for the entire clan. Zichen, Ni Chiefing felt the determination in Ni Zichen's eyes. He already knew that there was no turning back. He knew his disciple very well. Ni Zichen was even more stubborn than Ni Jiaming. Once she had decided on something, she would never change her mind. Teacher, Zichen thanks you for teaching me. No matter how far I go in the future, you will always be my teacher in this life. And Chan suddenly knelt down, her eyes sparkling with tears. After that, she kowtowed to Chifeng. Chan Chifeng looked at the scene in front of him and choked with sobs. He suddenly understood that Chan had made up her mind. If she couldn't find a way to break the restriction, she would never return to the Dragon Rebel ancestral land. Teacher, goodbye. Chan stood up, and her eyes became firm again. After nodding deeply, she didn't stay any longer and directly turned to leave. Jiaming followed Chan, and the two of them gradually walked away. Tian and the others were still in the hall. After a long time, they finally reacted and hurriedly followed. Tian caught up with Chan and his brother. Looking at the two of them, the corners of his mouth curled up strangely. He thought to himself, maybe I have a way to break the absolute shadow restriction. Master, it won't be long. Give me 2 more months, and I will definitely present you with the most perfect soul slave. Corpse Demon King knew what Tian was thinking and said with a chuckle, very good. Tian smiled faintly, his face full of confidence. Corpse Demon King was refining Zhu Qinxio's soul doppelganger into a soul slave. Since Zhu Qinxio was an elder of the Absolute Shadow Temple, he would definitely know how to break the Absolute Shadow restriction. Chifeng stood rooted to the ground, staring blankly at the gradually blurring figures outside the hall. He didn't know what to do. Since Chun and Jiaming left with Tian and the others, there was no need for Chifeng to see them off. After leaving the Dragon Rebel Valley, Tian let out a long sigh of relief. They had only been in the forbidden land of wind and cloud for half a month, but they had experienced several life and death situations. Although they hadn't obtained many inheritances in the forbidden land, they had obtained something even better than an inheritance. The Chelan's precious blood didn't just increase their strength. More importantly, it changed their martial bodies, which would be greatly beneficial to their future cultivation. Sister, do I have a terrible illness? Jiaming and Chun walked to the front, and the former suddenly asked. Yes. Chun didn't even think about it. He nodded and said, but I can't tell you now. I promise you that I will find a way to cure you. Oh, Jiaming responded faintly. There was no fear on his face, only a calm smile, as if he didn't care about life or death. After a while, Tian and the others arrived at the valley where they had first entered the forbidden land of wind and cloud. Tian looked at the hanging coffins on the cliff, his eyes burning with passion. He turned to Jean de Bayo and said, De Bayo, it's up to you. Don't worry, boss. Jean de Bayo chuckled. He obviously knew what Tian was thinking. Chapter 892. Jiaming and Zichen were also looking at the dragon coffins on the cliff. Their expressions were solemn, as if they were thinking about something. At that moment, Tian and Jean de Bayo flew up at the same time and appeared on a huge dragon coffin. Yes. Jean de Bayo nodded and prepared to use the 3,000 seals of demons and gods to forcefully break the seal formation of the dragon coffin. At that moment, Zichen frowned slightly. Her beautiful figure rushed into the sky and appeared beside Tian and Jean de Bayo. She said coldly, What are you doing? The dragon in the dragon coffin is not dead. It's just sealed. I want to break the seal and revive the dragon. Tian could sense that Zichen was very angry and had to explain. Break the seal? Zichen's beautiful eyes trembled slightly. She said coldly, You don't even know what the seal is, and you dare to break it by force. What do you mean? Tian's face darkened, not understanding Zichen's meaning. This is the black dragon seal that Lord Demon Saint used to seal the dragon clan. Only Lord Demon Saint can break it. Zichen's pretty face was gloomy as she said, If you break the black dragon seal by force, the dragon in the dragon coffin will not be revived. It will die immediately. Why? Tian clearly sensed that it was the seal that imprisoned the dragon. Logically speaking, as long as the seal was broken, the dragon would be revived. What did it have to do with who broke the seal? Zichen was stunned. Her beautiful eyes flickered. She was obviously hesitating, but she finally said, "The black dragon seal is not an ordinary seal. There's a killing formation hidden in the seal. If the seal is broken, the killing formation will be activated and instantly kill the dragon in the dragon coffin." A killing formation. Yet Tion's eyes darkened. He immediately understood and murmured, "No wonder there is the aura of a formation in the seal. It is a killing formation." The killing formation was set up by Lord Demon Saint. Only he knows how to break it. Zichen nodded and said solemnly. Yet Tion's eyebrows furrowed as he pondered. Although Jean de Bayo could break the black dragon seal, he could not break the killing formation in the seal. If that was the case, things would be troublesome. It seemed that he could only open the dragon coffin after jamming recovered his memory. "Boss, what should we do?" Jean de Bayo looked at Tion and secretly glanced at Zichen, as if he didn't trust her words. Tion thought about it and shook his head slightly, indicating for Jean de Bayo to give up. The seal could not be broken. Jean de Bayo narrowed his eyes and looked at the 10,000 dragon coffins around him with a helpless expression. These coffins were filled with divine dragons. If he saved these divine dragons, he would have a divine dragon army. He would be invincible. Tion glanced at Zichen and chose to believe him. 3 figures descended from the cliff. Since the dragon coffin could not be opened, there was no need to stay. Tion prepared to leave immediately. Zichen walked to the deepest part of the valley and formed a seal with both hands. A huge force surged out and bombarded the cliff in front of him. The next moment, a miraculous scene appeared. The cliff shook and cracked. A dazzling beam of light shot out and formed a light passage. "Tion, are we leaving just like this?" Lushan walked up to Tion and asked in a low voice. "Yes." Tion nodded. Of course, he knew what Lushan was thinking. He said, "If the others are still alive, as long as they meet the Dragon Rebel tribe, they will send them out safely. Lushan must be worried about the people of Heaven's Sword Pavilion. Those people have been separated from Tion's group in the valley and never appeared again." But Tion guessed that the others were probably killed by the Soul Splitter. All right. Lushan looked helpless, but there was nothing she could do. "Tion, we can leave now." Zichen opened the exit of the forbidden ground. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He let out a long breath and called out in a low voice. Tion agreed and nodded to the others. He jumped and was the first to step into the beam of light. Then the others followed him. They closed their eyes because of the dazzling light. When they opened their eyes again, they were out of the forbidden ground and in the valley they had been in. Tion opened his eyes. His eyes gradually recovered. He looked around and found nothing different from when he came here. What? But the next moment, he found something was wrong. His eyes darkened. Shan and the others were gone. They had made a deal with Shan and the others that they would wait for them in the valley for half a year. If Tion and the others didn't come out in half a year, Shan would leave. But only half a month had passed, and Shan had disappeared. "My father and the others are gone." Jiao also found something was wrong. She screamed in surprise. Her delicate face was full of panic. She knew her father very well. He was a man of his word. He wouldn't go back on his word. The smell of blood. Tion spread out his soul awareness and carefully explored everything within thousands of meters. Immediately, he found something unusual. He moved and flashed over. When everyone saw Tion go over, they all rushed over. Tion came to a thorny bush hundreds of meters away and saw a pool of blood on the ground. His face darkened, and he had a bad feeling. A corpse. At that moment, Jean de Bayo screamed. Everyone immediately looked over and saw a corpse lying in the thorny bush. It looked like it was in great pain before it died. "It's someone from the Scorching Sun Empire." Tion looked and immediately recognized the corpse. It was the person who had provoked them before, the gray-robed elder from the Scorching Sun Empire. "Look, there's a corpse here too." The next moment, another scream was heard. Everyone looked over and saw another corpse. It looked like the gray-robed elder had died. His face was twisted in pain. It's someone from the heaven-severing sect. Jean de Bayo recognized the person and screamed, "Don't tell me they're all dead?" "Father." Yu Jiao also thought of this. She wailed and desperately searched the thorny bush. Nie Tian quickly asked Lishan and the others to follow Yu Jiao. At the same time, he searched himself. Everything he saw was clear. Soon, he found the other 3 corpses. Including the 2 from before, there were 5 people. The people from the 5 major forces were all killed. "Mr. Yu." Nie Tian took a step forward and arrived in front of corpse. It was Yu Qingshan. "Father." When Yu Jiao saw Yu Qingshan's corpse, she wailed and rushed over. She hugged the stiff corpse and sobbed uncontrollably. Nie Tian's face was gloomy and terrifying. His blood was boiling in his heart. Who killed the people from the 5 major forces? Yu Qingshan and the others were not weak. They were all in the 4th layer of the heaven realm. The person who could kill them was not simple. Looking at the method of killing, it seemed like there was only one person. Moreover, Yu Qingshan and the others could not fight back and were tortured to death. "Boss, there's a word here." Jean de Bayo suddenly found something and shouted. Chapter 893. 1. When Ye Tian saw the bloody words on the ground, he suddenly understood something. The murderer must be someone from the Abyss of Dragons. This one word was a clue left behind by Yu Qingshan before he died. When Yu Jiao picked up the corpse, the clue was exposed. Yu Qingshan must have wanted to write the entire Abyss of Dragons, but he could only write one word with his last breath. Abyss of Dragons. Yu Jiao also saw the one word. Her delicate face was full of murderous intent. Nie Tian wasn't surprised at all that the Abyss of 10,000 demons had shown up, because Li Tianhao was from there. Besides, Yu Qingshan and the others were important figures in the 5 major forces. Not many people dared to kill them, but the Abyss of Dragons was one of them. Fortunately, the matter of the hanging coffins on the cliff was not leaked. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. Nie Tian had already warned everyone not to leak anything that happened in the forbidden area. If anyone disobeyed him, he would not mind cutting off their heads personally. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt an inexplicable force in his body, as if it was trying to break free from his restraints. Whoosh! A ray of light suddenly gushed out from Nie Tian's body and quickly disappeared into space. This is... Nie Tian sensed something and a ring appeared in his hand. His face fell and he shouted, "Oh no!" The ring that appeared in his hand was the dragon ring he got from Li Tianhao. He tried a few times, but he could not erase the soul mark on the dragon ring. It was very strange. He also found that the soul mark on the dragon ring did not belong to Li Tianhao, but to another person. It seemed that the dragon ring belonged to 2 people. One was Li Tianhao, the other was the mysterious person. Just a moment ago, Nie Tian sensed that the dragon ring released some information and left through space. He immediately understood that the information must have been stored in the dragon ring by Li Tianhao, but because of the restriction of space in the forbidden area, the information could not be released. Now that they were out of the forbidden area, the information was eager to escape the restriction of the dragon ring and be released. There is no doubt that this information was related to the dragon coffin on the cliff face, and it would definitely be received by the others in the Myriad Dragon's Abyss. Nie Tian tried every possible means to keep the secret of the hanging coffins on the cliff, but in the end, because of his own carelessness, he failed to do so. His guess was correct. The people in the Myriad Demonic Dragon Abyss had indeed received this information. Almost at the same time as the information was released, a huge altar floated in mid-air in a huge abyss. There were actually 9 dragon shadows that were hundreds of meters long surrounding it. It was very vast and majestic, making people feel like worshipping it. At the center of the altar, a raging fire was burning. It was like a tentacle that had a life of its own as it extended towards the sky. At this moment, a ball of light floated over from the void. Like a meteor, it surged into the flame of the altar. The flames on the altar immediately went berserk. The flames soared to a height of 1,000 meters, as if they wanted to burn the entire world. "We have news." The person guarding the altar saw this scene and hurriedly shouted, Go and get the high priest. Before this person could finish speaking, several black-robed figures appeared in the sky. Every one of them was hidden in a black robe, and their faces could not be seen clearly. Disciples kowtowed to the high priest. When the people below saw the black-robed figures in the sky, they all knelt down in unison, appearing extremely pious. "Don't speak." One of the black-robed figures spoke in a deep voice, as if it was a sigh from the abyss. The people below did not speak anymore. They lowered their heads and knelt, not daring to move. The black-robed figure in midair looked at the altar flame in the sky. Countless images appeared in the flame, showing what happened in Yetion and the others on the hanging coffins on the cliff face. Several people watched the entire process with shocked hearts. Their bodies were all stiff, and they could not speak. "High priest, so the dragon coffin recorded in the Dragon Codex really does exist." After a long time, a shocked voice sounded, unable to conceal the shock in the voice. Everyone else looked at the tall, black-robed figure in the center. He was the high priest of the myriad demonic dragon abyss, Inzishu. Inzishu was stunned and did not speak for a long time. "Everyone, follow me to the myriad demonic palace. I want to meet the dragon head." After a full 10 seconds, Inzishu finally spoke. His deep voice sounded nervous and excited. The dragon coffin recorded in the Dragon Codex had appeared. The day of the myriad demonic dragon abyss rise was just around the corner. "Meet the dragon head." When the others heard the 2 words dragon head, they were all stunned. There was an indescribable fanaticism in their eyes, as if the dragon head was a god in their eyes. A moment later, Inzishu and the others arrived in front of the myriad demonic palace. "Hall Master Qin, I have an important matter to report to the dragon head." Inzishu did not dare to enter the myriad demonic palace, so he shouted from afar. "High priest, the dragon head is in seclusion. Everything can be discussed later." The myriad demonic palace hall master appeared at the door. His voice was cold and emotionless. Inzishu's expression was awkward, but he insisted, "Hall Master Qin, this is a serious matter. It concerns the future of the Dragon Abyss. Please report it." The myriad demonic palace hall master's face darkened, and he said coldly, "High priest, this hall master will not repeat the same words twice. You can leave now." Inzishu frowned. He understood the myriad demonic palace hall master's temper. He was stiff and arrogant. Other than the dragon head, he did not put anyone in his eyes. "Sigh." Inzishu sighed helplessly. He could only leave. "Wait." Just as Inzishu and the others turned around, a majestic voice rang out in the palace. "Qin, let them in." "Yes." The myriad demonic palace hall master Qin was stunned at first, but then he nodded respectfully and signaled Inzishu and the others to enter. Inzishu was pleasantly surprised, and he quickly turned around and entered the myriad demonic palace. Entering the palace, Inzishu immediately felt a mighty and majestic dragon chi, and his whole body was indescribably comfortable. Come to think of it, it had been a few decades since he last stepped into the 10,000 Demons Hall. Under normal circumstances, only 2 people could enter and leave the myriad demonic palace freely, and that was the dragon head and Qin. Other than these 2, no one was allowed to enter the myriad demonic palace. Dragon head. Inzishu did not see anyone, but he respectfully bowed to the dragon throne in the center of the palace. "Rise." The majestic voice rang out again, but only the voice could be heard. "I know what happened. The appearance of the dragon coffin is a sign of the rise of the myriad demonic dragon abyss. You have done a good job. Thank you for your praise, dragon head." Inzishu knelt on the ground, not daring to raise his head. Li Tianhao was a spy planted by him, and he was also his disciple. Li Tianhao's death in exchange for information about the dragon coffin was very worth it. "Dragon head, what should we do next?" Inzishu asked excitedly. "High priest, don't spread the news about the dragon coffin for the time being." The palace was silent for a moment, and then the majestic voice rang out again. "In the image sent by Li Tianhao, there is a silver-haired young man. The dragon ring on his hand is very special. Help me get it." Dragon head. Only the dragon ring? How should we deal with the silver-haired young man? Zishu was stunned and asked coldly. Do as you wish. The majestic voice with a hint of ridicule resounded in the palace. Chapter 894. The dragon head's voice reverberated in the myriad demon palace, empty and ear-piercing. I'll do it right away. Zishu replied carefully and walked out of the myriad demon palace with the other priests. Not long after Zishu and the others left the palace, a pitch-black dragon Chi appeared above the dragon throne and gradually condensed into a humanoid figure. It was like a mass of chaos, and its appearance couldn't be seen clearly. Dragon head, is there anything different about that silver-haired kid's dragon ring? Is it worthy of your attention? Qin Yi's figure appeared and lowered his head, not daring to look at the chaotic figure. It's not just different. The chaotic figure smiled coldly and murmured, if I'm not wrong, that silver-haired kid's dragon ring is the one recorded in the Dragon Code, the spiritual dragon royal ring. Royal ring. Qin Yi's whole body trembled inexplicably when he heard the last 4 words. His eyes flashed with a hint of passion, and then he said in astonishment, the legendary 9-star dragon ring? The 9-star dragon ring was the most powerful dragon ring to the people of the myriad demon dragon abyss. The dragon ring was divided into 9 grades, from 1 star to 9-star. Ordinary dragon abyss martial artists only had 1 or 2-star dragon rings. Even the high priest and the myriad demon palace master had 4-star dragon rings. The myriad demon dragon head had 5-star dragon rings. It was obvious how attractive the 9-star dragon ring was to the dragon abyss martial artists. Yes, the chaotic figure nodded and said in a deep voice, as long as I can get the spiritual dragon royal ring, I can break through the plane's restriction and advance to the heavenly emperor realm. By then, no one in the entire Shumi world will be my match. The myriad demon dragon abyss will unify the Shumi world. Ha ha! The arrogant laughter echoed in the palace, appearing strange and eerie. Dragonhead, since the spiritual dragon royal ring is so important, do you need me to do it personally? Qin Yi asked cautiously after the dragon head finished laughing. No need. This matter can't be publicized. It would be bad if the Holy Light Dynasty and the Divine Martial Palace find out. As the primal chaos phantom spoke, it actually let out a long yawn. This emperor is tired. You may leave. Yes. Qin Yi answered and retreated respectfully. In the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, Zishu stood in the main hall of the priest hall. At this moment, he was alone, as if waiting for someone to arrive. Jingji, you've come. Suddenly, the corners of Zishu's mouth twitched as he spoke. At the next moment, a figure appeared and landed in front of Zishu, bowing and greeting. Teacher. The person who came was very young, only about 20 years old. Half of his face was covered by a strange mask, while the other half of his face was cold and demonic. His name was Yu Jingji, the high priest's proudest disciple, and also his most terrifying killer. Teacher, what can I do for you? Yu Jingji was extremely respectful towards Zishu. He had been raised by Zishu, so in his eyes, Zishu was not only a teacher, but also a father. Zishu smiled faintly and opened his palm. A wisp of flame rose up, and Nye Tian's face appeared within the flame. Jingji, this silver-haired cultivator, has a dragon ring on his hand. Help me retrieve it, Zishu said indifferently. Yes. Yu Jingji nodded respectfully and did not ask any more questions. He only knew that if Zishu asked him to do something, he must do it, no matter the cost. Looking at Yu Jingji's back, Zishu's lips curled into a strange smile. He mumbled, Jingji, you have never failed before. This time will be no exception. Yu Jingji was Zishu's trump card. Letting him take action was to ensure that nothing went wrong. In the forest, on a narrow path, more than a dozen figures walked slowly. It was Nye Tian and the others. Yu Qingshan and the others were killed. Everyone was in low spirits and did not speak a word along the way. Nye Tian was slightly worried about the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. Although Li Tianhao was dead, The news of the dragon coffin had already reached the abyss. The dragon abyss would definitely take action, so he had to prepare early. Next, Nyation planned to return to the Dark Moon Empire first. After that, if everything went smoothly, he would go to Sky Sword Pavilion with Jean de Bayo and LaShawn. After all, he had promised Sun Hai that he would definitely visit Sky Sword Pavilion. After a while, everyone came to a fork in the road. Nyation took out the map and looked at it, preparing to go back by the shortcut. At this moment, Lin Feng stepped forward and nodded. Nyation, the Saintess, and I will return to Sky Demon Cult first. Goodbye. Nyation looked at Lin Feng and then at Eugene. After thinking for a while, he said, "Then we will leave now." Lin Feng had used a black longsword before. His swordsmanship realm was not weak. This surprised Nyation. He actually did not realize that Lin Feng was a swordsman. Nyation did not know why Lin Feng deliberately hid his strength. However, he could see that Lin Feng had no evil intentions towards Eugene and would do his best to protect her. At this moment, Nyation did not want to reveal Lin Feng's swordsman identity. Since the latter deliberately hid it, there must be a reason. He did not want to complicate matters. After Lin Feng and Eugene left, everyone walked on another small road. 3 days later, Nyation and the others finally arrived at the border of the Dark Moon Empire. Everyone stepped on the official road. If there were no accidents, they would be able to return to the Dark Moon Imperial City before dark. Half a day later, everyone saw the Dark Moon Imperial City. "Get out of the way." Just at this moment, a roar sounded. Behind them, there was the sound of iron hooves trampling. Nyation's face darkened. Turning back, he saw dozens of fast horses galloping over. On the main road, dust flew up into the sky. Nyation smiled bitterly and shook his head. In a flash, he retreated to the side to let this group of people pass. Bah! A group of scum, arrogant my ass. Dozens of fast horses galloped past. Jean de Bayo could not help but scold angrily. He was very unhappy. "Forget it. No need to lower yourself to their level." Nyation laughed, not taking it to heart. But at this moment, the group of people turned back. The leader was a skinny middle-aged man. He sat high up on the back of a horse. A pair of shifty eyes stared straight at Yu Jiao, shining with a lascivious light. Nyation's face darkened. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. These people actually had designs on Yu Jiao. They were really looking for death. "Little girl, follow me." The middle-aged man didn't even look at Nyation and the others as he said arrogantly. In their eyes, Nyation and the others were not old. They were definitely not strong. They were not a threat. Boss's good taste. This little girl's skin is soft and tender. She must be a virgin. The few people behind him laughed arrogantly. Looking for death. Yu Jiao had not yet walked out of the pain of losing her father. How could she endure being teased? She scolded. Her eyes flashed with cold, killing intent. She directly slapped out with her palm. Boom! With a slap, the void trembled. A terrifying palm force bloomed in the air and pressed towards the group of people. Chapter 895. Bam! 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 A muffled sound resounded in the space, and dozens of black-clothed martial artists were sent flying by Yu Jiao's palm. Many of them were still in the air, and their bodies couldn't bear the pressure of the powerful palm force, and directly exploded and died. Blood splattered in the air. It was a bloody and tragic scene. These people were all Heavenly Evolution realm martial artists. Even a middle-aged man was only at Heavenly Evolution level 5. They could not resist Yu Jiao at all. Yu Jiao killed dozens of people with just one palm strike. Only the leader was left. Gulp! When a middle-aged man saw his companions being slaughtered in an instant, he gulped. His face turned pale, and he fell off the horse. How could he have imagined that Yu Jiao, a girl who looked so weak, would have such terrifying strength? Yu Jiao took a step forward and released a cold, murderous intent. There was no hesitation in her eyes. Plop! The middle-aged man knelt on the ground and kowtowed loudly. He begged, "Young lady, this lowly one had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai and offended you. Please be magnanimous and treat this lowly one as a fart. Please let this lowly one go." "Sorry, I don't fart." Yu Jiao's lips curled up coldly. She was about to kill the person in front of her. Wait. At that moment, Nie Tian took a step forward and stopped Yu Jiao. Yu Jiao was stunned, but she still stopped. Nie Tian looked at the man on the ground and suddenly asked, "Are you from the Heavenly Demon Cult?" Yes, yes, yes. I am from the Heavenly Demon Cult. The man nodded his head like a rattle drum. Please be magnanimous. I will remember it. Tell me, what happened in the Black Moon Empire? Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he asked cold. When he entered the Black Moon Empire previously, he sensed that something was wrong. Along the way, Nie Tian did not see anyone. It was as though the entire Black Moon Empire had become a barren land. This was very unusual. These dozens of people in black were the first group of people Nie Tian saw after entering the Black Moon Empire. These people were from the Heavenly Demon General. This meant that something big might have happened in the Black Moon Empire. The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment, but he immediately understood and said, "Lord, you still don't know, right? The Black Moon Empire was already destroyed by the Heavenly Demon Cult 10 days ago. Now, the Heavenly Demon Cult is controlling the Black Moon Empire." Nie Tian's eyes suddenly darkened. He released a powerful pressure from his body and said coldly, "Is what you said true? It's all true. I wouldn't dare to lie." That person was so scared that his face turned deathly pale. It turned out that Nie Tian's strength was much more terrifying than Yu Jiao's. He had really offended Tai Sui this time. Why did he have to provoke such a group of people for no reason? What about the Xian clan? Nie Tian calmed down slightly and asked in a deep voice. That person swallowed his saliva and said, "The Xian family's ancestor is already dead. The Xianyu Emperor is imprisoned in the Heaven Devil Palace, and the rest of the Xian family has basically been executed." Impossible. His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when a furious voice resounded, and it was precisely Xian Xiu. When Xian Xiu heard that the Xianyu Empire had been destroyed, he couldn't react for a moment. Now that he heard that other than the Emperor, the rest of the Xian family had been annihilated, how could he accept this? "This king will kill you." Suddenly, Xian Xiu roared, and a black ray shot out. Puffed. That person didn't even have time to scream before his chest was pierced through, and he died. Everything happened so suddenly that Nie Tian couldn't even react. However, it didn't matter. If he died, then he died. Anyway, he had already obtained important information. Yu clan. At this time, Yu Jiao also thought of something. She screamed and ran towards the imperial city. "Hurry up and follow her." Nie Tian was afraid that Yu Jiao was too impatient and directly clashed with the Heavenly Devil Cult. That would be terrible. Now that the Heavenly Devil Cult had already taken control of the Black Moon Imperial City, and a large army was guarding it, if there was a conflict, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. Nie Tian and the others hurriedly followed. Nie Tian had only left the Black Moon Empire for slightly more than 20 days, and such a huge thing actually happened. Xian, you must have died, and the Heavenly Devil Cult must have received the news. They immediately started a war with the Black Moon Empire and annihilated it. When Nie Tian left, Xian Yu was already like a candle in the wind. However, Nie Tian didn't expect the former to not even last a month. Xian Yi was dead, and the Black Moon Empire was destroyed. In this way, the agreement between him and Xian Yi was meaningless. "Who are you?" When they came to the city gate, they were stopped by a group of warriors in black. The Heavenly Devil Cult had just taken over the Black Moon City. They definitely wouldn't allow unknown people to enter and leave as they wished. "The people who killed you." Yu Jiao was burning with anxiety. She attacked without any explanation. The guards guarding the city were not weak. They were all at the 9th level of Heavenly Evolution. Boom! With a muffled sound, the guard at the front was sent flying by Yu Jiao's palm. At this time, the others rushed over. "Who dares to touch our eldest, miss? You're courting death." The 3 Ren brothers roared and attacked at the same time, directly defeating those guards. The 3 Ren brothers were at the 2nd level of Heaven Realm. The guards could not stop them at all. Everyone forced their way into the city. Yu Jiao and the 3 Ren brothers ran in the direction of the Jade Mansion. Nie Tian was worried about Rui Qianyu's safety. He said to Han Tian, You go with Miss You. You must ensure her safety. Okay. Han Tian nodded and chased after them. Where's Xian Xiu? Nye Tian turned, but Xian Xiu was nowhere to be seen. Jean de Bayo's eyes flickered. Boss, he seems to have gone to the palace, he said. Forget it. Let's not care about him. Nye Tian sighed. Xian Xiu definitely wanted to go to the palace to see if everyone from the Xian family had been killed. Xian Xiu was already at the 3rd level of Heaven Realm, coupled with his bloodline power. As long as he did not encounter an opponent above the 5th level of Heaven Realm, he could at least protect himself. Boss, where are we going? Jean de Bayo looked at Nye Tian, waiting for him to speak. Nye Tian looked at the people around him. Other than Jean de Bayo, there was also Lu Shan, Ni Zichun, and Ni Jiaming. Let's go to the Craftsman's Guild first. After thinking for a while, Nye Tian decided to find Huijia first to get a clear understanding of the situation in the Imperial City. Rui Qinyu was at the Alchemist Guild, so she should be fine. After a while, Nye Tian and the others arrived at the Craftsman's Guild. The scene that greeted them made them turn pale with fright. The entire Craftsman's Guild was in ruins. There was not a single person in sight. Oh no! Nye Tian's heart sank, and his whole body stiffened. Originally, he thought that even if the heavenly demon cult attacked the Black Moon Imperial City, they would not dare to touch the Craftsman's Guild and the Alchemist's Guild. However, the scene before him made him understand that he had underestimated the heavenly demon cult. Since the Craftsman's Guild was destroyed, the Alchemist's Guild would not be able to escape. Bastard! Are the people from the heavenly demon cult crazy? Nye Tian bellowed. The heavenly demon cult attacked the Craftsman's Guild and the Alchemist's Guild. Were they not afraid of the revenge of the two great forces? Without thinking too much, Nye Tian prepared to go to the Alchemist's Guild to take a look. Chapter 896. Nye Tian was worried about Rui Qinyu's safety. He did not dare to delay and immediately headed to the Alchemist's Guild. At this moment, a sinister laughter suddenly rang out. Nye Tian, long time no see. The sinister voice rang out, and the air was filled with a cold aura. Then, there was a wailing sound, like thousands of ghosts crying, which made people's hearts tremble. It's you. When Nye Tian heard this voice and felt the aura of the person, he immediately guessed the other party's identity and said solemnly, Vengeful Ghost Xiao Wuqing. That's right. The person who came was the soul-devouring vengeful ghost Xiao Wuqing, the person who was wrongly accused by Sky Sword Pavilion of stealing the Nirvana Sacred Heart. The last time Nye Tian fought with him, he almost lost his life to this person. Who would have thought that this fellow would not go away and would actually appear again? It's rare that you still remember me. Xiao Wuqing's voice was mournful and cold. His figure appeared in midair, and his cold eyes locked onto Nye Tian. He said with a hint of ridicule, Nye Tian, you've been targeted by a vengeful ghost. Don't think about peace for the rest of your life. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. His eyes were frighteningly calm. He knew that Xiao Wuqing was wronged, but this matter had nothing to do with him. If Xiao Wuqing wanted revenge, he should go to Sky Sword Pavilion directly, not him. Now that Nye Tian was in a hurry to leave, if Xiao Wuqing really wanted to pester him, he did not mind killing him. Xiao Wuqing was very strong. He was a warrior in the 3rd level of the Heaven-Human realm. When he fought with Nye Tian previously, both of them were seriously injured. But at that time, Nye Tian only had the strength of the Heaven Evolution realm. Now, he was in the 2nd level of the Heaven-Human realm, which was similar to Xiao Wuqing's realm. Therefore, he was very confident that he could defeat the latter. Xiao Wuqing, I have urgent matters to attend to now and do not want to be entangled with you. I advise you to leave immediately. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Nye Tianling said. His body slowly rose and released the mighty power of thunder, which spread thousands of meters away. Xiao Wuqing suddenly felt an oppressive aura, and his eyes couldn't help but darken. Only now did he realize that Nye Tian's strength had actually reached the shocking 2nd layer of Sky Human. This discovery was so shocking that he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. The last time he fought with Nye Tian, the other party's strength was only at the 5th level of Heaven Evolution. Not seeing for a short few months, Nietion's strength actually rose to Davis' second level. This was seriously too terrifying. In Xiao Wuqing's opinion, this was simply impossible. Xiao Wuqing suddenly thought of something and let out a strange laugh. Nietion, it seems like you just came out from the forbidden land of wind and cloud. No wonder your strength has increased so much. He had long heard that Nietion had entered the forbidden land of wind and cloud, but he had never imagined that the latter would actually be able to come out from the forbidden land. For hundreds of years, no one had ever walked out of the forbidden land of wind and cloud. Nietion was the first. Don't block my way. Nietion couldn't be bothered with him and spoke coldly. The power of lightning around his body became even more terrifying, and terrifying lightning surged in the void. I, vengeful ghost, want to see if the inheritance in the forbidden land of wind and cloud is as terrifying as the rumors say. Xiao Wuqing had no intention of giving way. Instead, he smiled sinisterly and released a bleak, killing intent. The vengeful ghost scythe slashed across the air, and a terrifying blood rain appeared, filling the air with a blood-colored rain curtain. Hell Totem. Seeing Xiao Wuqing directly activate the Hell Totem, Nietion's eyes involuntarily narrowed. Nietion, your strength has increased, and so has mine. When the Black Moon Empire was destroyed, my vengeful ghost scythe could absorb a large number of vengeful spirits. Xiao Wuqing smiled sinisterly, and the vengeful ghost scythe in his hand spun again. Instantly, the blood-colored rain curtain around him became even thicker, and the air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. This person's strength is so evil. And I, Zichun, and the rest retreated 10,000 meters away. Looking at the figure with the scythe in the air, their beautiful eyes trembled as they murmured, "Don't worry, with Boss's current strength, he could be killed in one move." Jean de Bayo chuckled, not the slightest bit worried for Nietion. On the other hand, Lushan looked at the two figures in the air with a worried expression. The Hell Totem absorbs the power of blood and souls. Today, I will completely destroy it, Niet Tianling said coldly, and his whole body surged with terrifying killing intent. Is that so? At this moment, a blood-colored snake appeared under Xiao Wuqing's feet, surging wildly. Streaks of blood-colored runes appeared, and a blood-colored totem with a circumference of 100 meters appeared. Waves of bloody aura filled the air. The bloody aura covered the sky and the earth, spreading to 10,000 meters away. Nietion felt a wave of bloody aura, which made him slightly uncomfortable. Xiao Wuqing had indeed become stronger, but to Nietion, this strength was far from enough. His divine sense had previously merged with the divine rune on the three-legged mysterious cauldron and became abnormally strong. The Hell Totem could no longer affect him. Nietion died. Xiao Wuqing saw that the Hell Totem had no effect on Nietion at all, and he couldn't help but roar. His body moved, and the totem under his feet revolved crazily. The Hell Blood Rain turned into blood-colored sharp blades, attacking Nietion. Facing Xiao Wuqing's attack, Nietion's expression didn't change. Instead, he raised the corner of his mouth. In the next moment, the 9 dragon veins in Nietion's body revolved crazily, and the mighty power of thunder surged out. The void within a few thousand meters was filled with purple-gold lightning, forming a sea of thunder. Nietion stood in the sea of thunder like the god of thunder, controlling everything. Roar! The power of thunder condensed into a thunder dragon in the air. It was more than 1,000 meters long, and the entire world seemed small. Boom! Nietion's whole body was filled with murderous intent. The thunder dragon rolled out, carrying the power of thunder, and attacked Xiao Wuqing. Feeling the aura of the thunder dragon, Xiao Wuqing instantly felt that something was wrong. His eyes revealed a look of panic, which gradually turned into fear. He didn't expect Nietion's strength to grow to such a terrifying level. He couldn't resist such an aura at all. Rumble! In the next moment, the thunder dragon tore apart the blood-colored rain in the void. Pitter-patter! An ear-piercing explosion sounded in the space. The hell blood rain couldn't resist the power of thunder at all and was directly drowned. Crack, crack, crack. Then a crisp sound was heard. The hell totem under Shao Wuqing's feet couldn't withstand the impact of the thunder dragon, and it cracked and began to collapse. Die. Seeing this scene, Nie Tian's mouth twitched. His figure flickered, and a terrifying sword intent surged out from his body. Heaven's slash appeared in his hand. At this moment, as long as he stabbed with his sword, Shao Wuqing would definitely die. Nie Tian, don't kill him. At this moment, a clear voice was heard. Then, a delicate figure stood in front of Nie Tian. Lushan? Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Lushan to appear. Big brother Nie Tian, I beg you, don't kill him. Lushan's small face was wrinkled, and she begged sincerely. Why? Nie Tian was slightly stunned, and he asked with a frown. Lushan was in a dilemma, and she didn't know what to say. People of Sky Sword Pavilion, I, Shao Wuqing, don't need your sympathy. I'll kill you. At this moment, Shao Wuqing's voice was heard abruptly. Then, a hell blood rain turned into a blood-colored sharp blade and attacked Lushan. Chapter 897. The sudden scene made Nie Tian's eyes narrow. Immediately, a ball of crimson light surged out of his body. It was the ultimate Fire Scarlet Heaven battle armor, which enveloped Lushan. Bang! With a muffled sound, the blood rain blades struck the crimson battle armor and shattered, unable to harm Lushan at all. Shao Wuqing, you're courting death. Nie Tian took a step forward, his entire body releasing a terrifying killing intent, and a terrifying aura surged out. Lushan pleaded for Shao Wuqing, but not only was the latter not grateful, he even wanted to kill Lushan. Such behavior was no different from a beast. Kill me, Shao Wuqing said with a cold face. Shao Wuqing, do you really think I don't dare to kill you? Nie Tian's eyes darkened, his entire body filled with murderous intent. There was no great enmity between him and Shao Wuqing, but the latter had repeatedly wanted to kill him. This had already exceeded the limits of Nie Tian's tolerance. If not for Lushan's appearance, Shao Wuqing would already be a corpse. Kill me, Shao Wuqing roared again, but he sneered. If you kill me, Lord Blade will definitely avenge me. That will be the day of Sky Sword Pavilion's destruction. Nie Tianling laughed and said, don't you think it's too childish to threaten me with the Burial Blade Society? Nie Tian had never placed the Burial Blade Society in his eyes. It was just a dark force that could not be shown in public. It was no different from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Since you're not afraid, just kill me. Shao Wuqing looked like he was courting death, extremely arrogant. Nie Tian did not want to waste time on him, so he turned to look at Lushan and asked, are you going to kill me? Since Lushan had spoken, Nie Tian was naturally willing to give her face. Shao Wuqing's life was in Lushan's hands. Lushan was stunned for a moment, and her brain worked quickly. She had already heard about Shao Wuqing from Lilingyun. It was indeed Sky Sword Pavilion's fault. It was Lilingyun who told her to bring Shao Wuqing back to Sky Sword Pavilion if there was a chance. Actually, Lushan was Shao Wuqing's junior sister. Seeing someone from Sky Sword Pavilion degenerate into a homicidal maniac, Lushan did not feel good. Senior brother Shao, you should leave, Lushan said after struggling for a while. In the end, she couldn't bring herself to do it. Shao Wuqing's pair of blood-red eyes stared at Lushan. There wasn't the slightest bit of gratitude in his eyes, only boundless hatred and even killing intent. He sneered and said, young mistress of the Sky Sword Pavilion, letting me go will be the biggest mistake you've made in your life. Because one day, I will definitely flatten the Sky Sword Pavilion. Shao Wuqing's arrogant voice resounded in the void. Shao Wuqing's figure flashed, turning into a stream of light and disappearing. Lushan, are you okay? Nie Tian shook his head slightly. It was the nature of girls to be soft-hearted, especially for a girl like Lushan, who was only 14 or 15 years old. It was indeed a little cruel to let her decide the life and death of someone who was inextricably linked to her. However, since he let Lushan make the decision, he would not object to her decision. Shao Wuqing was no longer a threat to Nie Tian, But to the Sky Sword Pavilion, he was still a thorny problem. "Let's go," said Nyetian. Without further delay, he sprinted towards the Alchemist's Guild. After a while, he arrived at the Alchemist's Guild, but what he saw was the same as the Blacksmith's Guild. The entire guild had been razed into ruins. The Sky Demon cult is simply a lunatic. Nyetian roared angrily as the blood in his body rose. The Sky Demon cult was too arrogant. They actually dared to offend the two largest guilds in the Sumi world. This was simply courting death. The Alchemist's Guild and the Blacksmith Guild of the Black Moon Empire were merely branches. As long as the Holy Light Empire knew what happened here, the Sky Demon cult would definitely be annihilated. What was the Sky Demon cult trying to do by killing the innocent? "Boss, what should we do?" Jean de Bayo asked solemnly, as he knew that Rui Qinyu was in the Alchemist's Guild and also knew the latter's importance to Nyetian. "Let's go to the palace first." Nyetian's eyes were filled with killing intent as he prepared to go to the palace first. If he couldn't find Rui Qinyu in the palace, he would kill his way to the Sky Demon Palace. It was already nighttime. The night was dark, and there were not many stars. Several figures sprinted towards the palace. At the same time, a fierce battle was going on in the palace hall. Two figures floated above the palace, their auras extremely strong as they confronted each other. These two figures were not unfamiliar. One was Xin Xiu, and the other was Mo Biming. "Prince Xin Xiu, I really didn't expect you to be able to walk out of the forbidden land of wind and cloud," Mo Biming said in a cold tone, his words filled with naked provocation. "Where's my father?" Xin Xiu's body was covered in blood, rain-black sand, and the air was filled with a terrifying bloody aura. "Xin Tianluo?" Mo Biming sneered again and said, "He is now imprisoned in the Sky Demon Palace. You wouldn't be naive enough to think that the Lord Sectmaster will let him continue to be the Emperor, right? Where is the Sky Demon Palace?" Xin Xiu roared in a hoarse voice. His extreme anger almost made him lose his rationality. The death of his ancestor, the destruction of the mystic Moon Kingdom, and the destruction of the Xian family. These matters were like bolts of lightning, bombarding his heart. "The Sky Demon Palace is the holy land of my sect. How can I tell others so casually?" Mo Biming raised his brows and smiled, but there was an additional hint of playfulness in his eyes. He said, "Prince Xin Xiu, this seat has brought you a relative. I wonder if you still remember him?" After saying that, Mo Biming suddenly raised his voice and shouted, "Sorrow, release the heavenly demon beast." "Yes," Sorrow's voice sounded. Then a metal cage appeared in the air, and there was actually a person imprisoned in the cage. The person in the cage was much taller than a normal person. He was about 2 meters tall, and his face was 70% human and 30% beast. The muscles on his body bulged like lumps of sarcoma, and the smell of blood was glaring. "Heavenly Demon Beast, kill him." Sorrow's figure appeared and landed on the metal cage. His lips curled into a playful smile. "Roar." The person in the cage roared angrily and directly rushed out of the metal cage. His figure flickered, and like a mountain, he landed in front of Xin Xiu. Xin Xiu felt a strong pressure that made it difficult for him to breathe. The strength of the monster in front of him was actually at the 5th level of the heaven-human realm, and its aura seemed to be even stronger than Mo Biming's. But the next moment, Xin Xiu felt a familiar aura from the monster, causing his whole body to tremble inexplicably. His eyes suddenly narrowed, and then revealed an unconcealable fear. "You!" Xin Xiu looked at the monster in front of him, and his voice actually choked. He said shakily, You're Xin Xiao?" Xin Xiu felt the aura of the monster in front of him, and carefully identified the latter's face. Finally, he confirmed that the person in front of him was the Crown Prince Xin Xiao. "Big brother," Xin Xiu wailed, his expression extremely sorrowful. He never thought that Xin Xiao would become like this. Chapter 898. Xin Xiao. Xin Xiu had never imagined that the monster in front of him was actually his big brother. His entire body shook inexplicably. Then he looked at Mo Biming and roared furiously. "What did you do to him?" Xian Xiao had been injured by Nye Tian and taken away by Xian Yi. How did he end up in the hands of the Sky Demon cult? Umph. Mo Biming laughed mockingly and said, "This is a great gift the cult master prepared for the Xian family. Let me tell you, the people of the Xian family all died at the hands of the heavenly demons. Or rather, he had died at the hands of Crown Prince Xian Xiao." Ha ha! This! Xian Xiao's arrogant laughter pierced Xian Xiao's heart like steel needles. He almost lost his mind and shouted, "This is impossible! I don't believe it! I don't believe it! Prince Xian Xiao, it doesn't matter if you don't believe me now. Won't you believe me when you die at Xian Zhao's hands?" As Mo Biming spoke, his eyes suddenly flashed with cold, killing intent as he roared, "Heavenly demon monster, kill him for me! Roar!" Xian Zhao's eyes were bloodshot and devoid of any emotion. With a roar, he pounced at Xian Xiao. Heavenly Devil Cult Master Yuru Shuang was truly ruthless. He had actually reduced Xian Xiao to this state and caused the Xian family to die at Xian Zhao's hands. Was there a more cruel method of revenge in this world? In fact, Xian Yi was the one who handed Xian Xiao over to the Sky Demon cult. When Xian Xiao had been injured, Xian Yi had taken him to the Heavenly Devil cult in hopes that Yuru Shuang could heal him. He and Yuru Shuang had agreed that as long as the latter cured Xian Xiao, Xian Yi would let the Empyrean demon Sanus participate in the Wind and Cloud duel. If Eugene died in the forbidden land of Wind and Cloud, then Xian Xiao would die with her. Xian Yi fulfilled his promise and allowed Eugene to participate in the Wind and Cloud duel and return safely. Unfortunately, Yuru Shuang had broken the agreement. Not only had she failed to cure Xian Xiao, but she had also turned him into a monster. She had even ordered Xian Xiao to kill almost everyone in the Xian family. At that moment, Xian Xiao had lost all rationality and had become a pure killing tool. Boom! Xian Xiao moved and attacked Xian Xiao with his palm. A terrifying aura burst forth, and the blood jade mystical sand condensed into a huge black hand, which slammed down. Xian Xiao couldn't react in time. It was already too late for him to make a move. His strength was below Xian Zhao's to begin with. Now, he was in a life-or-death situation. Whoosh! At this moment, a terrifying sword intent appeared in the void. The bright sword light shot out 1,000 meters away, illuminating the entire night sky. Boom! With a loud bang, the sword's shadow collided with the blood jade mystical sand, blocking the fatal blow for Xian Xiao. The terrifying blast dispersed, and Xian Xiao was actually forced to take several steps back. The sudden scene before him caused Mo Biming's eyes to narrow as he looked at the newcomer. When he saw the face of the person clearly, the corners of his eyes couldn't help but twitch while a wisp of terror actually appeared in his eyes. He said with astonishment, "It's you, Nye Tian." The person who saved Xian Xiao at the critical moment was none other than Nye Tian. "Long time no see, Dark North King," Nye Tian said with a gloomy and cold expression. It seemed that the Heavenly Devil Cult Master wasn't in Black Moon Imperial City, but had left Mo Biming here. Nye Tian. Mo Sorrow couldn't help crying out when he saw Nye Tian again. Even his voice became shrill. Ever since he was injured by Nye Tian, he had been holding a grudge against Nye Tian and couldn't wait to skin Nye Tian alive. Now that he saw Nye Tian again, other than anger, he felt more shock and fear in his heart. Just now, Nye Tian had forced Xian Xiao back with one sword. His strength was far beyond his expectations. Even though Xian Xiao was just a monster, his true battle prowess wasn't inferior to any strong practitioner in the 5th level of the Celestial Being Realm. Even Mo Biming might not be Xian Zhao's match. Nye Tian actually dared to fight Xian Xiao head-on and even had the upper hand. This made Mo Sorrow feel a deep fear. Mo Sorrow, you're really lucky. I can't believe I didn't kill you the last time. Nye Tian swept a glance at Mo Sorrow with a disdainful expression. Father. Mo Sorrow didn't dare to look at Nye Tian directly and hid behind Mo Biming. When Mo Biming sensed Nye Tian's strength, his gaze couldn't help but sink. He then sneered and said, Nietion, looks like you've gained a lot from this trip to the forbidden land of wind and cloud. You've actually reached the second level of the celestial being realm. However, your strength is still not enough for me. Is that so? Nie Tianling laughed. In the next instant, he moved and rushed toward Mo Biming. Mo Biming's gaze narrowed. He didn't think that Nie Tian would dare to rush over. Instantly, a terrifying dark north devil, Chi rose from his body and solidified the space within thousands of meters. Blazing flame, star mark. Nie Tian could feel the strong resistance in the space, but he didn't care about it. He lightly muttered and slapped out with his palm. Instantly, the star soul tablet in his body sensed it. Boundless astral energy gushed out and lit up the night sky. Crack, crack, crack. In the next instant, the solidified space couldn't withstand the huge pressure of the astral energy and directly shattered. Nie Tian's figure was like a bolt of lightning, shooting toward Mo Biming. At this moment, the astral energy around him condensed into a blazing pillar of light. It was like a sharp sword, sharp and austere to the extreme. Blazing flame star mark. Nie Tian used a 7th grade astral soul. His strength had reached the celestial being realm, so the star soul tablet could brand a 7th grade astral soul. This was the first time Nie Tian used a 7th grade astral soul. He estimated that the power of a 7th grade astral soul was enough to instantly kill any martial artist below the 4th level of the celestial being realm. Mo Biming was at the 5th level of the celestial being realm. Even if he could withstand the blazing flame star mark, he would definitely be injured. Mo Biming felt the powerful power of the blazing pillar of light. His eyes revealed great panic. The dark north demonic chi around him instantly condensed, forming a dark north battle armor outside his body. Boom! The blazing flame star mark bombarded the dark north battle armor. A terrifying explosion sounded, and Mo Biming's figure was directly sent flying, leaving a trail of blood in the air. One strike, just one strike. Mo Biming's dark north battle armor was directly smashed, and he was also sent flying hundreds of meters away. Pooh! Mo Biming stabilized his body, but before he could say anything, he spat out a mouthful of black blood. His entire face was as pale as paper. His eyes were filled with great shock. He had never thought that Nie Tian's strength would actually increase to an unimaginable level. Nie Tian's figure suddenly stopped in the air. His body suddenly surged with endless lightning power, and a lightning tentacle stretched out in the void, rapidly extending. Mo Yoshang screamed in fear. Before he could even react, he was firmly bound by the lightning tentacle. He screamed in terror, "Father, save me! Quickly save me!" When Mo Biming saw Mo Yoshang in Nie Tian's hands, he instantly became frightened and screamed in panic, "Nie Tian, quickly release him. He only had this one son, and he treated him like his life depended on it." Mo Biming, I have a few questions to ask you. Don't try to play tricks with me. Nie Tianling coldly laughed, and his austere gaze swept past Mo Yoshang. Chapter 899. Mo Yoshang fell into Nie Tian's hands. Mo Biming immediately panicked and shouted, "Nie Tian, what do you want to know? I'll tell you everything. Don't hurt my son." Very well. Nie Tian smiled faintly and suddenly looked at Xian Xiao. What's wrong with him? Nie Tian heard some of the conversation between Xian Xiao and Mo Biming. He knew that the monster in front of him was Xian Xiao. The dignified crown prince Xian Yue had fallen to such a state. It was worse than death. Xian Xiao in this state was crueler than killing him. Mo Biming was slightly stunned. He swallowed and hesitated. Nie Tian's eyes darkened. He suddenly exerted force in his hands, and the lightning tentacles tightened. The vast power of lightning surged into Mo Yoshang's body. The latter immediately cried out like a pig being slaughtered. No! Mo Biming's body shook, and he screamed, I'll tell you everything." Nie Tian shook his head and said with a smile, "Why did you have to make him suffer a little? Mo Biming swallowed hard and let out a long breath of turbid air before he said, Crown Prince Xian Shao has been struck by Lord Cult Master's heavenly devil seal. Now, he has lost his consciousness and is no different from a low-grade spirit beast. Bastard! Xian Xiao heard Mo Biming's words and roared angrily. A terrifying killing intent rose from his body. Sky Demon Seal? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He signaled Xian Xiao to calm down and continued to ask, How do you control him? Just now? Nie Tian saw that Mo Biming seemed to be able to control Xian Xiao. It was very strange. This, Mo Biming hesitated again, but when he saw the killing intent in Nie Tian's eyes, he immediately took out an item and said, The sect leader gave me a heavenly demon talisman. I used it to control Prince Xian Xiao. Give it to me. Nie Tian's mouth twitched. He didn't waste words and said directly. Mo Biming hesitated and said, I'll give you the Sky Demon Seal. Let my son go. Nie Tian sneered. His cold gaze swept across Mo's sorrow and said, Mo Biming, do you still have the qualifications to negotiate with me? Father, save me. Save me. I don't want to die. Feeling the killing intent in Nie Tian's eyes, Sorrow Mo shrieked in fright. Her face was as pale as paper, looking extremely pitiful. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that one day his life would be firmly held in the hands of Nie Tian. When Mo Biming heard his son's cry for help, it was like a needle piercing his heart. However, when Yu Rushuang had given him the talisman, she had warned him not to lose it. If he were to hand over the heavenly demon talisman to Nie Tian, how would he explain it to Yu Rushuang? Mo Biming, have you still not made up your mind? Nie Tian's eyes darkened as his killing intent intensified. Forget it. Sorrowful death is more important. Mo Biming raised his head to look at Nie Tian. Hardening his heart, he finally threw the heavenly demon talisman over. Although the heavenly demon talisman was important, Sorrow Mo's life was even more important. Nie Tian grabbed the talisman and sent his soul awareness into it. Immediately afterwards, he sensed a strong soul aura, which seemed to be very repulsive to him. Nie Tian frowned and sent an even stronger wave of mental energy over, firmly restraining the spiritual aura. At this moment, he felt a mysterious soul connection appear, and a mysterious connection was established between him and Xian Xiao. This feeling was similar to when Nie Tian had signed a blood contract with a corpse demon lord. This way, he would be able to completely control Xian Xiao. Roar! Xian Xiao also seemed to sense something and let out a low roar. Then, he looked at Nie Tian and calmed down. Xian Xiao immediately understood that Xian Xiao was already under Nie Tian's control. Nie Tian, now that you have the heavenly demon talisman, can you release my son now? Mo Biming looked nervous, afraid that Nie Tian would accidentally kill Sorrow Mo. Don't worry, I still need to clarify a few things. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, The Alchemist Guild and the Alchemist Guild were both destroyed by the Heavenly Demon Cult, right? Yes. Mo Biming was stunned at first, then nodded. After confirming this, Nie Tian's face couldn't help but darken as he asked, The people from the two guilds were all killed? Mo Biming clearly became flustered, his voice slightly trembling as he said, Most of them were killed, but some high-level alchemists and alchemists managed to escape. Nie Tian's eyes slowly turned gloomy as he continued to ask, The Alchemist Guild has a forbidden ice stone, and there is a girl imprisoned inside. Where is she? Forbidden ice stone? Mo Biming's eyes suddenly trembled, and he immediately denied, I have never seen the forbidden ice stone. Are you? Where is she? Not waiting for Mo Biming to finish speaking, Nie Tian let out a deep and angry roar, and the power of lightning turned into a sharp blade that pressed against Mo Yoshang's neck. If it moved a little further, Mo Yoshang would definitely die on the spot. Don't kill him. I'll speak. I'll tell you everything. Mo Biming's eyes suddenly widened, and he cried out in shock. The forbidden ice stone was brought back to the Heavenly Demon Palace by the cult leader. The Heavenly Demon Palace. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he asked coldly, "Where is it?" Mo Biming's face was extremely ugly, and his facial features were squeezed together, as if he was about to cry. He desperately shook his head and said with a trembling voice, "I can't say. I really can't say. I'll ask again, where is it?" Nietion's eyes were cold, and his entire body was filled with killing intent. As long as Mo Biming dared to say anything, he would kill Mo Yoshong without hesitation. Mo Biming's face was red, but he really didn't dare to say the location of the Heavenly Demon Palace. He knew that his next answer would directly determine Mo Yoshong's life or death. However, if he leaked the Heavenly Demon Palace to outsiders, what awaited him was still death. He had no other choice. No matter what, he would die, and it was only a matter of time. "Where is it?" Nietion's face turned gloomy, and his eyes surged with ice-cold, killing intent as he asked word by word. His patience had already run out. If Mo Biming's next sentence was not the answer he wanted, Mo Yoshong would undoubtedly die. The Heavenly Sword Mountain. Mo Biming knew that Nietion was really going to kill him, and his eyes suddenly trembled as he shouted in panic. The Heavenly Sword Mountain? Hearing this name, Nietion was slightly stunned. The Heavenly Sword Mountain? Lishan was also stunned at the same time as Nietion. She immediately shouted, "Nonsense! The Heavenly Sword Mountain is the territory of the Heavenly Sword Pavilion." Nietion also felt that it was strange. He had heard from Sun Hai that the Heavenly Sword Pavilion was in a mountain range called the Heavenly Sword Mountain, and the Heavenly Demon Cult was also in the Heavenly Sword Mountain. This was a little strange. If the Heavenly Demon Cult's base was really in the Heavenly Sword Mountain, there was no reason for the people of the Heavenly Sword Pavilion not to know. "Nietion, I'm not lying. The Heavenly Demon Palace is really in the Heavenly Sword Mountain," Mo Biming said nervously. "At this time, I can't lie to you." Chapter 900. Nietion could tell that Mo Biming was not lying, but he was still worried. "Take me there." Mo Biming was a wily old fox. If Sky Demon Palace was really in Sky Sword Mountain, it would be in a very secluded place that would be difficult to find. Just like in a bloody field, Nietion would have a hard time finding it without someone to lead him there. "Take you there." Mo Biming's eyes trembled, and he became even more panicked. "I only know that Sky Demon Palace is on Sky Sword Mountain, but I don't know its exact location." "Bullshit." Nietion's eyes darkened, and he shouted, "You are one of the 4 kings of the Sky Demon Cult. How could you not know where Sky Demon Palace is?" Nietion had long known about Mo Biming's identity. His position in the Sky Demon Cult was second only to the leader, Yu Shuang, and the 2 deputy leaders. Wouldn't it be a huge joke to say that he did not know where Sky Demon Palace was? "Lord Nietion, I really don't know where Sky Demon Palace is." Mo Biming scowled and said in a hoarse voice, "I did go to Heaven Demon Palace, but every time it was Lord Cult Master who sent people to find me. When I entered Heaven Demon Palace, my divine sense would be sealed, so it was impossible for me to remember the way in." "So that's how it is." Nietion's cold gaze swept over Mo Biming. The latter was terrified, so he could not be lying. He had not expected Yu Shuang to be so cautious. Sky Demon Palace was a secret place that even Mo Biming, one of the 4 kings of the Sky Demon Cult, did not know about, let alone outsiders. No wonder Yu Shuang dared to kill the people of the Alchemist Guild and the Artificer Guild. She had a very well-hidden place to hide. After the Sky Demon Cult took over the Imperial City, Yu Shuang did not stay there. Instead, she returned to Sky Demon Palace. This meant that she had no intention of taking over the Black Moon Empire. She was purely here for revenge. "Yu Shuang, I want to see just what kind of person you are," Nietion muttered to himself, his eyes filled with killing intent. From the way Yu Shuang had used Xian Xiao to kill the Xian family, it was clear that she was a demoness through and through. Her methods were vicious and rarely seen. Mo Biming, if this is all you've told me, it won't be enough to protect Mo Yoshong's life. Nietion's eyes suddenly turned cold as he spoke. As one of the 4 celestial demon kings, Mo Biming was also a wily old fox, so he definitely knew something else. He just hadn't mentioned it. Hearing Nie Tian's words, Mo Biming's body trembled. Large beads of sweat formed on his forehead, and his back turned cold. What else do you want to know? After forcing himself to calm down, Mo Biming asked with a trembling voice. I want to know some information about the heavenly demon cult. I believe that with your status, you must know quite a few people. Tell me. Nie Tian's lips curled into a cold smile. The lightning energy around his body seemed calm, but it was actually berserk. As long as he wasn't satisfied with Mo Biming's answer, he would definitely not hesitate to kill Shang. Mo Biming looked at Nie Tian. Only now did he realize that the youth in front of him was much more terrifying than he had imagined. Fine. Hardening his heart, Mo Biming solemnly said, I can tell you some things, but I want you to promise to let my son go. Sure. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, as long as I'm interested in what you say, I can spare Shang Mo's life. Mo Biming solemnly nodded his head. He then transmitted his voice to Nie Tian and said 4 names. Yin Ba, Chen Haoyu, Hong Quan, Wang Yiping. Who are these 4? Nie Tian frowned and asked coldly. Mo Biming's expression was dark and vicious. He knew that if he revealed the identities of these 4 people, it would be equivalent to betraying the heavenly demon cult. After hesitating for a moment, Mo Biming looked at the dying Mo Yoshang and finally transmitted his voice to Nie Tian. Yin Ba, on the surface, is the Yin clan patriarch of the Mystic Moon City's 4 great clans. His true identity is the southern overlord of the heavenly demon cult. Nie Tian's expression darkened when he heard Mo Biming's words. He had felt that the name Yin Ba was somewhat familiar, but he didn't expect it to be the Yin clan patriarch. At this time, Nie Tian came to a realization. No wonder the heavenly demon cult could easily take down the Mystic Moon Imperial City. Perhaps Yu Shuang didn't even make a move. Logically speaking, even if Xin Yi died, the Mystic Moon Empire would still have the power to fight. As long as Yu Shuang didn't make a move, the Mystic Moon Empire could at least hold out for a few months. Unfortunately, the Mystic Moon Empire's destruction in a few days was definitely related to Yin Ba. With a spy like Yin Ba, it would be much easier for the heavenly demon cult to take down the Imperial City. Actually, it made sense. The heavenly demon cult had been operating for so many years, so it was normal for them to have a spy like Yin Ba. Continue. Nie Tian looked at Mo Biming coldly and said in a low voice. He wanted to see if the other 3 also had other identities. Mo Biming gulped and said, Chen Haoyu is the deputy sect leader of the heaven-severing sect on the surface, but his true identity is the West King of the heavenly demon cult. Hong Quan is the East King of the heavenly demon cult. I've only seen him a few times. He has always been stationed in the heavenly demon palace and is the sect leader's personal guard. Nie Tian nodded. He wasn't surprised by Mo Biming's words, but he found it strange that the heavenly demon cult had extended their claws to the heaven-severing sect. There's one more person. Mo Biming paused, and his eyes couldn't help but flash. Wang Yiping. This person is one of the 2 deputy sect leaders of the heavenly demon cult. Is that all? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. Mo Biming clearly had something he wasn't saying. If Wang Yiping was just the deputy sect leader of the heavenly demon cult, Mo Biming wouldn't be so nervous. Mo Biming hesitated, but in the end, he still said, he has another identity, the Deputy Pavilion Master of Heaven Sword Pavilion. Deputy Pavilion Master of Heaven Sword Pavilion? Nie Tian's brows furrowed, and he almost cried out involuntarily. This news was something he hadn't expected. It was far beyond his expectations. It can't be. Nie Tian suddenly thought of something. He turned to look at Lishan and asked, how many Deputy Pavilion Masters are there in Heaven Sword Pavilion? 1. Lishan was stunned. Of course, she couldn't hear what Nie Tian and Mo Biming were talking about, so she was very confused as to why Nie Tian would suddenly ask such a question. It really is him. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. It seemed that the Wang Yiping that Mo Biming was talking about was the deputy pavilion master of Heavensward Pavilion that Sun Hai had mentioned. Those two sovereign Shuetu were the sons of this deputy pavilion master, and they had died at the hands of Nietian. At this time, Nietian also understood why the people of Heavensward Pavilion didn't know that Sky Demon Palace was on Heavenly Sword Mountain. This deputy pavilion master must have hidden everything. Heavenly Demon Cult. This is really getting more and more interesting. The corner of Nietian's mouth slowly rose, and his eyes gradually became complicated. Seeing Nietian's expression, Mo Biming's eyes trembled, and he said carefully, "Lord Nietian, I've already told you what you wanted to know. Can you release my son now?" "Release?" Nietian Tianling laughed and said, "Of course I can release him." As his cold voice fell, Nietian raised his arm and directly threw Mo Biming over. Chapter 901. Nietian threw Sorrow Mo over, but he suddenly attacked. A terrifying sword intent struck the latter's body. "No!" Seeing Nietian suddenly attack, Mo Biming screamed. He wanted to stop him, but it was too late. Bang! 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 In the next moment, several muffled sounds could be heard. Sorrow Mo's body was covered in blood. Mo Biming's figure flashed and caught Sorrow Mo. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Nietian and roared, "Nietian, you tricked me." "Humph!" Nietianling sneered. "Mo Biming, you've been smart your whole life, but you've become childish at this crucial moment. Sorrow Mo wants to grind my bones to dust. How can I let him go so easily?" Pausing, Nietian's eyes flashed with a playful smile. "I only said that I wouldn't kill him, but I didn't guarantee that he would be unharmed. Seeing that you've provided me with some information, I'll only destroy his Yuan spirit Yuan meridian and let him live. For the rest of his life, I'll let him live wisely and not offend those he can't afford to offend." The cold voice was like a clap of thunder exploding in Mo Biming's ears, causing him to be stunned. After a long time, Mo Biming finally reacted. Sorrow Mo's aura was still there, but it was extremely weak. Nietian looked at Mo Biming and said cold, "You're a smart person. Let me give you a piece of advice. Leave Black Moon as soon as possible. The people from the Alchemist Guild and Blacksmith Guild will arrive soon. If you continue to stay here, you'll be the first to die." Yuru Shuang had Mo Biming stay in Black Moon Imperial City to make him a scapegoat. If Mo Biming didn't leave, he would have to face the wrath of the two guilds. Face grim, Mo Biming clenched his fists so hard that cracking sounds could be heard. However, in the end, he suppressed his anger and left with Mo Shang. Nietian glanced at Mo Biming and Mo Biming. Without stopping, he prepared to check on the Yu family situation before leaving for Heavenly Sword Mountain. Rui Qinyu was imprisoned in the Forbidden Ice Rock, so even if she was captured by the Heavenly Demon Cult, her life would not be in danger for the time being. "Mr. Nya, my eldest brother." Xian Xiu saw Xian Xiao following Nietian, so he walked over. If Nietian also wanted to control Xian Xiao as a killing weapon, then he was no different from Mo Biming and the others. "Do you want him to be like this forever?" Nietian glanced at Xian Xiu and asked coldly. "Mr. Nya, you possess remarkable abilities. You must have a way to help Big Brother recover. I beg you, please save him." Xian Xiu was slightly moved. He knelt in front of Nietian and pleaded. Now that the members of the Xian family were almost all dead and the Xianyu kingdom was also destroyed, there was no longer any conflict between him and Xian Xiao. All that was left was a brotherly bond. Strangely enough, when everything was going well, the two of them wanted to kill each other. Now that everything was a mess, Xian Xiu realized that the person in front of him was his eldest brother. "I will think of a way." Nietian nodded. Suddenly, a crimson cauldron appeared behind him. It was the crucible of hell. "Go in." Nietian glanced at Xian Xiao and said calmly. "Roar." Xian Xiao roared and stepped into the crucible of hell. Now that Nietian and Xian Xiao's souls had some kind of connection, he could be recognized by the crucible of hell and not be harmed by the astral holy flame. "I hope the astral holy flame can refine the killing intent in Xian Zhao's body," Nietian murmured. nodding slightly. The corpse Devil King was refining Zhu Qianxiu's soul clone. Once the soul slave was refined, he would see if there was a way to break the heavenly demon curse mark on Xianxiao. Let's leave first. Nie Tian looked at the palace and flew toward the Jade Mansion. The heavenly demon cult had no intention of taking over Mystic Moon City. It wouldn't be long before all the forces gathered in Mystic Moon City. Maybe even the people from the Holy Light Heaven Dynasty would return. At that time, Mystic Moon City would likely be divided among the forces. This was the truth. There was no other way. Xianxiu also left with Nie Tian. At this time, it was meaningless for him to stay in Mystic Moon City. Anyway, Nie Tian was going to the Heavenly Demon Palace, and his father, Xian Tianluo, was also imprisoned there. He could go with Nie Tian. After a while, Nie Tian and the others arrived at the Jade Mansion. The scene that greeted them was horrifying. Although Nie Tian was prepared, seeing the Jade Mansion in ruins and countless corpses lying around, many of which had begun to rot, he couldn't help but feel sad. He had lived in the Jade Mansion for a period of time. Seeing everything in front of him, he felt even more sad. The Heavenly Demon Cult didn't even let go of forces like the Alchemist Guild and the Artificer Guild. How could they let go of the Jade Mansion? Yu Jiao was stunned there. The extreme grief almost turned her into a wooden person. Her father died tragically and her family was destroyed. The successive blows were too much for her to bear. Han Tian and the three Rin brothers stood beside Yu Jiao. They were at a loss and didn't know what to say. At this time, any words of comfort were useless. Heavenly Demon Cult, I want you to pay with your blood. Suddenly, Yu Jiao looked up to the sky and roared. Her delicate facial features became distorted and ferocious, revealing an extreme, chilling intent. Nie Tian slightly clenched his fists. He didn't care what kind of hatred there was between the Heavenly Demon Cult and the Mystic Moon Empire. Since the Heavenly Demon Cult had killed innocent people, they must be eliminated. Next, Nie Tian and the others dealt with the corpses of the people in the Jade Mansion. They simply set up a big tombstone and engraved a big jade character. After dealing with all of this, the sky was already slightly bright. Nie Tian and the others did not delay and immediately went to the Heavenly Sword Mountain. Along the way, everyone was silent. Even Jean de Bayo, who was usually the most talkative, did not speak. The atmosphere was heavy. Nie Tian had already made a plan. He was going to the Heavenly Sword Pavilion to find Wang Yiping and meet this person who was both the Deputy Pavilion Master and the Deputy Cult Leader. Wang Yiping was the Deputy Cult Leader of the Heavenly Demon Cult. She definitely knew where the Heavenly Demon Palace was. As long as he found this person, everything would be easy. 2 days later, everyone finally set foot on the border of the Heavenly Sword Mountain. As far as the eye could see, there was a stretch of endless mountains, like giants towering into the sky. Among the mountains, some simple and unadorned buildings could be vaguely seen. There were people living there. Nie Tian and the others came to a restaurant at the foot of the mountain. There was a sign hanging on the door of the restaurant. On it were 4 big words: Heavenly Sword Restaurant. Nie Tian, the Heavenly Sword Restaurant is opened by the Heavenly Sword Pavilion. Let's rest here for a while, Lu Shan said, and took the lead to step into the restaurant. Nie Tian nodded slightly and followed. It was the first time Ni Zichun and Ni Jiaming saw a place like a restaurant. They were very curious and looked around. Just as Nie Tian stepped into the Heavenly Sword Restaurant, he suddenly felt a murderous aura, which made him tense up. He suddenly looked up and saw a pair of cold eyes on him from the second floor of the restaurant. Chapter 902. Nie Tian sensed the murderous intent and the dragon Qi on the other party. The first place he thought of was the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. He looked at the figure on the second floor. It was a very young face, around 20 years old. Half of his face was covered by a green mask, while the other half was cold and demonic. The person stared at Nie Tian and his pupils constricted. A terrifying, murderous intent flashed past. He was none other than the assassin sent by the high priest of the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, Yu Jingji. Yu Jingji's eyes flashed with murderous intent, but he shifted his gaze and stopped paying attention to Nie Tian. Nye Tian frowned when he saw the other party retract his murderous intent. His lips curled into a strange smile as he found a random seat and sat down. Since the other party did not make a move, Nye Tian chose to observe quietly. He had already sensed that the masked person was in the third layer of the heaven-human realm. He was very powerful. This person was only around 20 years old, but he was already so powerful. His talent in martial arts was amazing. Even Zhou Yao from the Meru world was far inferior to him in terms of talent. However, Nye Tian was not nervous. With his current strength, he could completely disregard the person. He was not even afraid of experts like Xiao Wuqing and Mo Biming. So why would he be afraid of an assassin in the third layer of the heaven-human realm? Nye Tian, Jean de Bayo, and the rest found 2 tables and sat down. Nye Tian had already learned from Lushan that Wang Yiping had been in seclusion. He did not know if she had finished her seclusion. At this moment, the surrounding crowd's conversation attracted Nye Tian's attention. They all seemed to be talking about a duel of great importance, and they talked about it with great vividness. Have you heard? Nangong Ba from the Divine Martial Palace is coming to Sky Sword Pavilion to challenge. Nangong Ba is one of the 6 evils. I wonder who he is going to challenge. Of course, he is going to challenge Sword Fanatic from Sky Sword Pavilion. Sword Fanatic Lin Feng. He is a famous lunatic in Sky Sword Pavilion, and he is one of the 3 legendary kings, the Sword King. However, he only accepts challenges from swordsmen. Could Nangong Ba be a swordsman, too? The crowd discussed animatedly. Their eyes were burning with excitement, as if they were looking forward to this battle. One of the 6 evils, one of the 3 kings. Nangong Ba and Lin Feng aren't simple. Thought Nye Tian indifferently while sipping his tea. There were 19 people in the Shumi world. 1 sovereign, 3 kings, 6 evils, and 9 demons. They represented the pinnacle of martial arts talent in the Shumi world. Nye Tian had seen quite a few of the 9 demons, but their talent and strength were not impressive in his eyes. Only the leader of the 9 demons, Qianlong Yingzheng, had decent talent. The others, such as Xian Xiao, Xin Xiu, Mo Qingshang, and the others, could only be considered ordinary geniuses. Their talent was inferior to that of the assassin from the Dragon Abyss. The 3 kings and 6 demons were all stronger than Zhou Yao, so Nangong Ba and Lin Feng were definitely stronger than Qianlong and Yingzheng. They were at least of the 3rd sky realm. Uncle, who is this Lin Feng that they're talking about? Is he very strong? Jean de Bayo narrowed his eyes and couldn't help but ask. Lushan was startled. After a long while, she realized that the uncle Jean de Bayo was talking about was her. Senior brother Lin Feng is the leader of the 3 great geniuses of Sky Sword Pavilion. I heard that he is a crazy swordsman, practicing from morning to night without stopping. I've only met him a few times, said Lushan with her small mouth pouting. She didn't seem to know Lin Feng very well. How strong is he? Jean de Bayo drank a big mouthful of tea and asked with a little excitement. Lushan's beautiful eyes flickered and said, Senior brother Lin Feng has the strength of the heaven realm since a few years ago. He hasn't appeared in public for a few years, so I don't know how strong he is now. But what? Jean de Bayo asked when he saw Lushan stop. Lushan thought for a while and said, I heard from the people of Sky Sword Pavilion that senior brother Lin Feng went to the Sword Tomb a few years ago and resonated with the souls of the Sword Tomb. He had the chance to obtain a powerful inheritance of sword intent, but he refused. Refused? This time, not only Jean de Bayo, even Han Tian and the others were startled and exclaimed in surprise. Nye Tian's eyes slightly narrowed. He was a little interested. Nye Tian had heard from Sun Hai that Sikong Wuji obtained the 2nd sword intent in the Sword Tomb of Sky Sword Pavilion. Unfortunately, Sikong Wuji died at the hands of Nye Tian in the forbidden land of wind and cloud. The inheritance of sword intent in the Sword Tomb should be very powerful, but Lin Feng refused it. It was very strange. Lushan frowned and said, I don't know why either. I heard that senior brother Lin Feng said that a swordsman should have his own sword intent. He doesn't need other people's sword intent. He wants to walk a sword path that belongs to him alone. Huh? Tian was slightly surprised. These words were very domineering. Not only did it show that Lin Feng's heart was strong, but it also showed that he was very confident in himself. He was confident that he could surpass all the strong cultivators in the Sword Tomb, so he didn't need to accept other people's sword intent. Such a person was really suitable to be called a sword fanatic. Lin Feng's sword intent was worthy of admiration. But Lin Feng's name reminded Nie Tian of another person who had the same name as him, Lin Feng. According to what Nie Tian knew, Lin Feng was also a sword cultivator, but he had deliberately concealed this fact in the forbidden land of wind and cloud. Uncle, what did that person mean when he said that sword fanatic only accepts challenges from sword cultivators? Jean de Bao nodded and continued to ask. Lu Shan smiled and said, "That's a rule that Lin Feng set himself. I don't know why either. Maybe he thinks that only sword cultivators can challenge other sword cultivators." Jean de Bao shook his head and glanced at Nie Tian. He chuckled and asked, "Little martial uncle, who do you think is stronger, the sword maniac or the eldest?" That's... Lu Shan was stupefied and hesitated. She had never thought about this question. She had already seen Nie Tian's strength, but she had never seen Lin Feng use his sword. But Lin Feng was the leader of the 3 swords of Celestial Sword Pavilion. He was also one of the 3 kings. Of course, he was extremely strong. Sikong Wu Ji couldn't compare with him. Lu Shan really couldn't say who was stronger between Nie Tian and Lin Feng. Nie Tian smiled indifferently and said, "Lin Feng and I have never met, and there are no grudges between us. There is no point in talking about who is stronger. Hurry up and rest. We will leave soon." Nie Tian didn't want to compare himself with anyone. Besides, he could hear that Lin Feng was a confident sword cultivator. Such a person's achievements on the path of cultivation wouldn't be low. Nangong Ba was one of the 6 disciples. Since he dared to challenge Lin Feng, his strength couldn't be underestimated. If these 2 people fought, it would be very exciting. Nie Tian smiled indifferently. He was looking forward to the battle. Nie Tian was staring at the assassin on the 2nd floor. The assassin didn't seem to be in a hurry. He was calmly drinking. "Let's go." Nie Tian smiled indifferently and was ready to leave. At that moment, a cultivator carrying a spear on his back entered the restaurant. After that person entered, an extremely aggressive qi filled the atmosphere. Everybody's heart started pounding, and they all looked at that person. Chapter 903. Nie Tian turned around and glanced at Xin Xiu. The latter obviously knew who the spear user was. What a strong aura! The eyes of the crowd trembled slightly. This spear user's entire body was emitting a peerlessly domineering aura. His entire person was like the tip of a sharp spear, sharp to the extreme, emitting a cold light that caused people to tremble. Nie Tian stared at the person who had just arrived. The person seemed to be enveloped in the shadow of a spear, giving off an oppressive aura. Soul of the spear. Nie Tian's heart skipped a beat. That's right. He could sense a strong soul of the spear from the person. This person was a spear user who had mastered the soul of the spear. Spear users were even rarer than saber users and sword users. Spear users who had mastered the soul of the spear were 1 in a billion. In Nie Tian's previous life, he had seen a peerless spear user who had mastered the ultimacy of the spear. He was no weaker than a peak sword user. He had never thought that he would meet such an outstanding spear user in the Sumi world. The spear user looked to be about 25 or 26 years old. He had strong facial features and was full of heroic spirit. However, his face was gloomy as if he was suppressing his anger. This person looked straight ahead and directly found a place to sit down, as if the surrounding crowd did not exist in his eyes. This was not arrogance, but a state of mind. Only a cultivator with a strong state of mind could ignore the outside world. Xin Xiu, who is he? Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he asked Xin Xiu telepathically. The spear on his back is the 9 Revolutions Overlord Spear. He is from the Nangong clan. Before Xin Xiu could reply, someone recognized the spear on the person's back and exclaimed as if he had seen something terrifying. Nangong. Nie Tian was astonished when he heard that name. He thought, could he be one of the 6 evils, Nangong Ba, the one who challenged Lin Feng? He is Nangong Ba. Xian Xiu said. He is from the divine martial palace, the legendary successor of the 9 Revolutions Overlord Spear. 9 Revolutions Overlord Spear. Upon hearing such a domineering name, Niet Tian's expression froze again. No wonder Nangong Ba's aura was so domineering. It turned out that he had cultivated a domineering spear technique. However, Niet Tian sensed another kind of aura from Nangong Ba's body. It was an abnormally powerful bloodline power that was stronger than any other bloodline power he had seen before. It was not something that the Xian clan, Yu clan, or Qianlong clan could compare to. If Niet Tian had not merged with the divine inscriptions on the 3-legged mysterious cauldron, he would not have been able to sense the bloodline power in Nangong Ba's body. Furthermore, the 9 Revolutions Overlord Spear on Nangong Ba's back was obviously not his primordial spirit. His primordial spirit was not the spear spirit, but it had actually reached the spear spirit realm. It was truly terrifying. After confirming Nangong Ba's identity, the crowd started to discuss among themselves. He's Nangong Ba. No wonder he's one of the legendary 6 evils. His aura is so strong. He is a spear user, not a sword user. Will Lin Feng accept his challenge? Nangong Ba is alone, and surprisingly, he dares challenge Lin Feng. Isn't he afraid that the strong cultivators of Celestial Sword Pavilion will kill him? He's from the godly Martial Palace. If Lin Feng defeats him, the godly Martial Palace won't punish him, but if he dies, the godly Martial Palace won't let him off. Niet Tian smiled indifferently. Those people were right. Everybody knew that Nangong Ba had come to Celestial Sword Pavilion to challenge Lin Feng. How could Celestial Sword Pavilion dare to kill him? Niet Tian glanced at Nangong Ba and didn't stay any longer. He stood up and left. No matter how attractive the battle between Lin Feng and Nangong Ba was, it was someone else's business after all. He didn't care too much about it. This time, Niet Tian had come to Celestial Sword Pavilion to find the vice leader of Celestial Sword Pavilion. When Niet Tian was about to leave, Jianming suddenly stood up and walked towards Nangong Ba. Niet Tian was surprised. He didn't know what Jianming wanted to do. His blood is very strange. Zicheng glanced at Niet Tian and said indifferently, "What do you mean?" Niet Tian was stupefied. He couldn't help but look at Nangong Ba. Zicheng and Jianming were both from the Dragon Rebel clan. If even they thought that his blood was strange, then it must be very terrifying. Niet Tian had sensed that Nangong Ba had a very strong blood spirit. Now, it seemed like the blood spirit was even more terrifying than he had imagined. He might have one of the 4 ancient blood spirits. Zicheng's beautiful eyes were twinkling. Her delicate face looked slightly solemn. The blood spirit of the 4 ancient blood spirits. When Niet Tian heard those words, he couldn't help but shiver. He had obviously heard of the 4 ancient blood spirits. However, it was recorded in the ancient times. They were the 4 most powerful blood spirits in the ancient times. They were the blood of the divine dragon, the blood of the Kirin, the blood of the phoenix, and the blood of the heavenly tiger. Niet Tian originally thought that these 4 powerful blood spirits had long gone extinct. He never expected to encounter the legendary blood spirit of the 4 ancient blood spirits here. Can you tell what kind of blood spirit he has? Niet Tian asked in a deep voice after he calmed down a little. It should be the blood of the Kirin. Zicheng nodded and said, "The blood of the Kirin." Niet Tian fixed his eyes on Nangong Ba. It seemed that he had underestimated the spear user in front of him. The latter was much more terrifying than he had imagined. At this moment, Jianming had already walked over. Get lost. However, before Jianming could get close to Nangong Ba, the latter let out a cold roar. Then, a terrifying spear essence was released from his body. It was extremely sharp, and it turned into a strong pressure that blasted towards Jianming. Bang! With a dull sound, Jianming didn't have time to react, and he was sent flying. When he landed on the ground, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His body trembled, and he almost fell down. Niet Tian's eyes narrowed. He then took a step forward, and a terrifying sword essence blasted out from the sky towards Nangong Ba. Huh? Nangong Ba was stunned at first, but he immediately stood up. His aura rose, and a terrifying spear shadow surged out from his body, shattering the incoming sword essence. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed. Nangong Ba's strength was beyond his expectation. The previous attack was overbearing and powerful. Nangong Ba's strength was in the 4th level of the heaven-human realm, and he was in the spear soul realm. In addition to the extremely powerful blood spirit in his body, his martial body was even more terrifying than a normal heaven-ranked spirit body. He was indeed a terrifying opponent. However, Nangong Ba seemed to be too overbearing. When Ni Jianming walked over, he directly blasted Ni Jianming away without saying a word. He was completely unreasonable. What an overbearing person. The crowd was stunned by the sudden turn of events. They stared at Nangong Ba with fear in their eyes. Nangong Ba was powerful and overbearing. He was indeed a terrifying person. Bastard. Seeing that Ni Jianming was injured, Ni Zichen scolded and struck out with her palm. A powerful palm force bloomed in the air and headed towards Nangong Ba. "You're courting death," Nangong Ba shouted coldly. His eyes flashed with cold, killing intent, and the 9 Revolutions Overlord Spear appeared in his hand. A terrifying aura filled the entire restaurant and froze the space. Boom! A terrifying spear shadow with destructive intent attacked Ni Zichun. Chapter 904. Seeing that Ni Jianming was injured, Ni Zichun suddenly made a move. However, when her palm force was still dozens of meters away from Nangong Ba, her aura was dispersed. Ni Zichun felt a sharp killing force coming towards her. Her delicate face couldn't help but stiffen, and her eyes revealed a look of panic. "Watch out!" Nye Tian let out a cry when he saw that the situation was not good. His figure flickered, and he directly stood in front of Ni Zichun. Crimson light surged out of his body and condensed into a crimson armor. It was as if his entire body was on fire. Bang! With a dull sound, the spear's shadow hit the ultimate fire scarlet sky armor. Nye Tian's body shook, and he took a few steps back before he finally stabilized his body. Crack! 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 In the next moment, a cracking sound came from Nye Tian's body. The scarlet sky armor could not withstand the terrifying spear intent and broke into pieces. What a powerful force! Nye Tian frowned, and his heart skipped a beat. His ultimate fire scarlet sky armor could withstand a head-on attack from an LV5 celestial human warrior. However, it was shattered by Nangong Ba's spear. It was evident that Nangong Ba's strength was much stronger than an ordinary LV5 celestial human warrior. Moreover, Nye Tian could tell that Nangong Ba had only used his spear intent in the previous attack. He did not use any other force. In other words, if he had used the power of the bloodline in his body, Nye Tian would have been severely injured. Who is this guy? At this moment, the crowd finally noticed Nye Tian, and their eyes were filled with shock. Most of the people present were powerful martial artists. Of course, they could tell that Nangong Ba's previous attack was powerful enough to kill an LV4 celestial human warrior. However, when the spear landed on the silver-haired martial artist, the latter's defense was only broken and he was not injured. It was unbelievable. This silver-haired young man is only at LV2 celestial human warrior. How could he have withstood Nangong Ba's attack? Someone could tell Nye Tian's strength and exclaimed, "It seems that this guy is also a monster." The crowd discussed among themselves as they looked at Nye Tian with a hint of awe in their eyes. Holy shit, he's a sword cultivator, and he's so young. Could he be Lin Feng? Suddenly, someone thought of something and shouted excitedly, "Sword addict Lin Feng." The crowd looked at the long sword in Nye Tian's hand and thought of his age. Their gazes couldn't help but become heated. Even though Lin Feng was famous, he was obsessed with swords. Lu Shan had only seen him a few times, let alone other people. Besides, Nye Tian was strong enough to compete with Nangong Ba. It was reasonable that people thought he was Lin Feng. "You are not Lin Feng." However, at that moment, Nangong Ba suddenly spoke. He stared at Nye Tian with a dark gaze and said in a deep voice, "Who exactly are you?" Although Nangong Ba had never seen Lin Feng before, he knew that Lin Feng was a sword fanatic. His sword Dao level was at least at the sword soul level. However, the silver-haired cultivator in front of him was only at the sword spirit level. Nangong Ba could also sense that the most terrifying thing about Nye Tian wasn't his sword energy, but the other kind of strength hidden in his body. This power even made the Kirin's bloodline in Nangong Ba's body tremble slightly. There was also an Ai Jiaming and Ni Zi Chun who attacked him just now. The bloodlines of these two people also contained terrifying power that seemed to be no weaker than his descendant bloodline. Nye Tian, Ni Zi Chun, and Ni Jianming all had a terrifying strength in their bodies. Nangong Ba was scared. Nye Tian, in particular, made him feel a great threat. "I want you to apologize." Nye Tian didn't reply to Nangong Ba. Instead, he spoke in a cold tone. "Apologize?" Nangong Ba was stupefied. Immediately after, he laughed loudly as if he had heard a joke. "I, Nangong Ba, know how to do anything except apologize. I especially don't apologize to the weak." "Weak?" Nye Tian sneered. His eyes darkened, and he said, "You think that my friends and I are weak and you are strong, right? Isn't that the case?" Nangong Ba retorted. His eyes were filled with disdain. In his opinion, be it Ni Zi Chun, Ni Jianming, or Nye Tian, they were all weak. Although the three of them had potential that he was scared of, at least for now, they weren't his match. When the crowd saw that Nye Tian and Nangong Ba were at loggerheads, their eyes were filled with anticipation. Before Nangong Ba could fight with Lin Feng, he had already met a strong opponent. It wasn't a bad idea to fight with the silver-haired cultivator first. At that moment, a pair of cold eyes locked onto Nye Tian on the second floor. It was none other than Yu Jingji, the assassin of Dragon Abyss. He had seen the fight between Nye Tian and Nangong Ba just now. He was scared of Nye Tian's strength. If he had been the one to block Nangong Ba's attack, he would have been able to block it, but he might have been injured. Nye Tian had easily blocked it and remained unscathed. That was something that he couldn't do. At that moment, Yu Jingji knew that the mission this time wouldn't be that easy. Nye Tian raised his head slightly and looked at Nangong Ba. He couldn't help but shake his head. The latter had no idea who he was facing. Ni Jianming was a super old monster who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. Back then, he had destroyed the Dragon Clan at its peak and almost destroyed all the other clans. How could such a person be called a weakling? Wasn't that the biggest joke in the world? "Silver-haired boy, if you want me to apologize, show me your strength. If you can defeat me, I won't say anything even if you want my life, let alone an apology." Nangong Ba stared at the long sword in Nye Tian's hand. His eyes were filled with malice, as if he was hostile to all swordsmen. "Sure." Nye Tian smiled faintly. He glanced at Nangong Ba and agreed readily. He also wanted to see how powerful the legendary Four Spirits bloodline was. Nye Tian, Ni Zi Chen's eyes flickered when she heard that Nye Tian had agreed to Nangong Ba's challenge. However, she swallowed her words. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Nye Tian smiled faintly and released a domineering confidence. "They're really going to fight." The crowd exclaimed in excitement. Looking at Nye Tian, he seemed to be confident of his victory. Didn't he know that he was facing one of the 6 evils from the Sumeru world? After a while, Nye Tian and the rest walked out of the restaurant and came to an empty valley at the foot of the Sky Sword Mountain. "This place is great." Nye Tian looked at the valley that had a radius of a few thousand meters and smiled faintly. "Please." Nangong Ba shouted angrily and stepped into the valley. His powerful aura caused the entire valley to shake violently. Nye Tian smiled faintly. He glanced at the crowd and immediately saw Yu Jingji. His lips curled into a strange smile. He then sent a message to Han Tian and said, "Han Tian, pay attention to the masked man. Keep an eye on him." Han Tian was stunned for a moment. He immediately reacted and nodded. Nye Tian knew that Nangong Ba was a strong opponent. If Yu Jingji suddenly attacked him while he was fighting against him, it would be troublesome. Chapter 905. In the valley, Nye Tian and Nangong Ba stood opposite each other. In the void, two powerful auras collided with each other, causing violent air waves to erupt. On the surrounding cliffs, boulders were constantly rolling down, and the entire valley was on the verge of collapse, as though it was about to collapse at any moment. These two people are so powerful. The crowd could feel the terrifying auras, and their hearts trembled. Tian and Ba had yet to exchange blows, but they had already unleashed such a powerful aura. It was truly shocking. The crowd was curious as to who Tian was. How could he be so powerful at such a young age and dare to fight against Ba? He should not be a nameless person. Swordsman, make your move. Ba let out a furious roar as his eyes were filled with wild, killing intent. With a clang, the 9 revolutions overlord spear in his hand soared into the sky like a dragon breaking out of the abyss, causing the void to tremble. Tian felt the powerful spear intent, and it was extremely overbearing. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the heaven-slashed sword in his hand let out an intense sword cry that shook the surroundings. A swordsman and a powerhouse. The battle between the pinnacle was about to begin. I, Ba, hate people who use swords the most in my life. Ba's battle intent was wild, and his aura rose. Like an enraged wild beast, he thrust his spear forward at an extremely fast speed. A flame appeared in the void and filled the space within a few hundred meters, as if the entire world was about to be set ablaze. The long sword in Tian's hand spun, and his sword intent erupted like a raging wave. At the same time, he opened up his heavenly realm and attacked with his sword. Ba was a spear user at the Spear Soul realm, and he had a powerful bloodline power in his body. Tian did not dare to be careless. The crowd felt the aura of the two and retreated. Their eyes were filled with fear. In the valley, the flame spear and the thunderbolt sword approached each other and collided in the next moment. Boom! With a loud sound, the entire valley shook. The gravel on the ground flew up, and dust filled the sky. The sword and the spear collided, and the two forces collided, causing endless, terrifying airwaves to burst out in the void. The spear light and sword light shot out violently for over a kilometer, and they transformed into numerous sharp blades that shot onto the cliffs of the valley, leaving behind numerous striking and shocking deep cracks. In the next moment, two figures soared into the sky and attacked at the same time. Above the void, the terrifying spear shadow and the sword shadow collided. The space was twisted together by the huge force, stretching and twisting, as if it would split open at any time. Amidst the boundless light, the two figures quickly retreated and stood in the air, facing each other. In the exchange of two moves, both of them were actually equally matched. Ba narrowed his eyes slightly. He did not expect his overlord Spear Soul to be unable to kill a swordsman in the Sword Spirit realm. Yet Tian's strength had exceeded his expectations. Tian stood tall, his body surging with sword will, like a sharp sword that could cut through the void. Ba was indeed powerful, and he was a formidable opponent. Although this person was only in the 4th level of the Heaven Realm, his battle prowess was definitely not stronger than the North Sea King. At this moment, Tian did not want to use his astral soul or the Heaven Shrouding Totem. He wanted to use his sword because Ba was a good opponent, and he could use it to temper his sword will. Tian's Sword Dao realm was 1 level lower than Ba's, but he possessed 3 types of sword will, which was enough to make up for the difference in their cultivation levels. As long as Ba did not use the power of his bloodline, Tian would definitely not lose. Swordsman, you have angered me. Seeing the indifference on Tian's face, Ba was inexplicably enraged. The aura in his body skyrocketed again, and a faint shadow appeared around him, like a giant human figure, enveloping his entire body. Overlord Cauldron shattering. With a furious roar, Ba moved, and it was as though he had merged with the 9 revolutions Overlord spear. The overwhelming spear will condensed into a 1,000-meter-long shadow of the spear. The space seemed to have been split apart and was split into 2. Dying. As the terrifying voice fell, the spear shadow moved at an extreme speed, stirring the dark clouds in the surroundings, and pressed down on Yetian. Be careful! The crowd saw this scene, and their hearts were in their throats. Nangong Ba's spear attack was too powerful, and it was definitely a move that he had used all of his strength. No one knew if Yetian would be able to withstand it. Yetian stood in the void, like a towering mountain, unmoving. Is he going to commit suicide? The crowd saw that Yetian did not move, and their eyes narrowed, their hearts pounding violently. Jean de Bayo and the rest also narrowed their eyes, not knowing what Yetian was going to do. Only Han Tian did not pay attention to the battle in the sky, and his eyes were fixed on Yu Jingji. He would definitely do what Yetian instructed and would not be disturbed by anything from the outside world. In the void, Yetian was like a rock, not moving at all. When the spear's shadow approached him, the 9 primordial meridians in his body began to operate crazily, and waves of mighty sword will gushed out. The sword of the divine wheel was activated again, and this time, it was combined with the power of the celestial realm. The combination of the divine wheel space, the sword of warp, and the celestial realm allowed Yetian's sword will to explode with extreme power. God-piercing sword, an indifferent voice was heard, and a sword shadow that was filled with the power of thunder and stars whizzed out. The place where the sword tip was pointing was the place where the spear shadow was going to land. Rumble. The 2 terrifying forces collided, and the void shook violently. A wave of air that was visible to the naked eye suddenly burst out, rushing in all directions. Rumble. Rumble. Countless explosions were heard, one after another. Dazzling light fell, bombarding the cliff below, and the entire valley began to collapse. Giant rocks flew in the air and were crushed by the invisible force. The crowd could only see the endless light colliding in the sky, and they could not see the figures of Yetian and Nangong Ba at all. Gradually, the dazzling light dissipated, and 2 figures gradually appeared. They were thousands of meters away from each other, and they seemed to be unharmed. However, at this moment, Yetian's figure swayed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His pale face became much better. On the other hand, Nangong Ba's face was red, and his strong facial features tightened. He did not say anything, but his throat moved silently. Why do you have to force yourself? Yetian shook his head and smiled faintly. He knew that Nangong Ba was also injured, but he forced himself to swallow back the blood in his mouth. In this way, at least in the eyes of others, he, Nangong Ba, was slightly superior. However, Yetian guessed that the blood in his mouth must not taste good. People like Nangong Ba were the epitome of wanting to save face and suffering. Yetian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and his face returned to normal. He smiled faintly and said, Nangong Ba, the battle between us has just begun. Great! Nangong Ba roared in anger, and his eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight. Yetian had aroused his desire to fight, and the next battle would be even more intense. Swordsman, you're very powerful, and you're qualified for me to use the power of blood. Nangong Ba's eyes darkened, and terrifying flames suddenly surged out of his body. The flames spread hundreds of meters away, and gradually formed a flame shadow. Chapter 906. Enai Zichun could not help but exclaim when he saw the flame shadow surrounding Nangong Ba. Fire, Qilin? Jean de Bayo was slightly stunned and asked, Is it very powerful? Yes. Enai Zichun nodded, but did not explain further. In ancient times, the Qilin tribe was known as the 4 holy spiritual tribes along with the divine dragon tribe, Phoenix tribe, and heavenly tiger tribe. However, the Qilin tribe was not as famous as the divine dragon tribe due to their small population. However, that did not mean that the Qilin tribe was weaker than the divine dragon tribe. Among all the Qilins, the fire Qilin was the strongest. Enai Zichun could sense that the Qilin bloodline in Nangong Ba's body was the power of the fire Qilin. No wonder every time Nangong Ba attacked, his spear would contain a strong aura of flames. It would not be easy for Yetian to win the battle now that Nangong Ba had used the power of his bloodline. What a terrifying power. The crowd could sense the aura from Nangongba's body. The scorching aura could be felt from tens of thousands of meters away. Many of them could feel the heat in their bodies as if they were in a furnace and they were sweating profusely. In the sky, Nietian was the closest to Nangongba. He could feel the scorching aura enveloping him and he felt suffocated. The Qilin bloodline is indeed powerful. Nietian's body shook slightly and the scorching aura around him dissipated. Swordsman, you should be able to rest in peace now that you're killed by such a powerful bloodline. Nangongba shouted coldly, and the flame shadow around him became even more intense. It looked like a giant beast, and it was the legendary Qilin Holy Beast. Die. Nietian smiled and said, I've never thought of dying young. That's not up to you. Nangongba roared and moved. He drew a trail of flames in the air and charged straight at Nietian. Roar! An earth-shattering roar was heard, and the flames around the fire Qilin became violent, as if the entire world was about to melt. When Nietian felt this strong pressure, there was no fear on his face. Instead, he smiled faintly and muttered, I wonder how does the legendary Force spiritual bloodline compare to the 9-star dragon vein? The moment he spoke, the 9 dragon veins in Nietian's body began to revolve. This time, the pure power of lightning burst out. The purplish gold lightning spread out and instantly converged into a sea of lightning that floated in midair. It was a shocking sight to behold. Nietian stood in the sea of lightning with purple gold power surging on his body. Vaguely, there seemed to be 9 golden dragons coiling around him. The crowd was struck dumb by what they saw. The strength that Nietian displayed was no weaker than Nangongba's. Dragon vein. And at this moment, Yu Jingji's eyes suddenly became hot, and his pupils trembled violently. This was the first time he saw Nietian use the power of the dragon vein, and he was shocked. There's actually such a powerful dragon vein in this world. Yu Jingji's heart trembled violently. He did not expect Nietian's dragon vein to be so powerful. The dragon ring on his hand is definitely more powerful than Lord Dragonhead's 5-star dragon ring. Yu Jingji's eyes were burning with excitement. However, he did not expect that Nietian's dragon ring was more powerful than the 5-star dragon ring. Nietian's dragon ring was the 9-star dragon ring, the legendary spiritual Dragon King ring. At this moment, Yu Jingji finally understood why Yin Zishu asked him to retrieve Nietian's dragon ring. Because the dragon ring was too powerful. Yu Jingji's eyes were burning with excitement, and the aura around his body became restless. He was ready to strike at any time. This was the best time for him to strike. Without Nangongba, he might not be a match for Nietian. Hence, he had to strike at the crucial moment when the two of them were fighting. Only then would he have a chance to retrieve the dragon ring. However, he did not know that when he released his aura, another pair of eyes was already staring at him. Han Tian sensed that Yu Jingji was about to make a move, and he immediately went on his guard. The primordial meridians in his body began to circulate, and his hands started to tremble slightly, as though they were about to petrify at any time. Everyone's attention was focused on the battle in the void, and they did not notice the unusual movements of Yu Jingji and Han Tian at all. Very well, I did not expect you to have a trump card. Let's have a battle then. Nangongba sensed the aura around Nietian, and the thunderbolt power was not any weaker than his blazing flame Qilin. Blazing flame Qilin. This was the power of Nangongba's bloodline. As soon as he finished speaking, the blazing flame Qilin around Nangongba became even more violent. The power of the blazing flame wreaked havoc in the space, and even the space seemed to have become fragile. Boom! In the next moment, a ball of terrifying flames suddenly shot out towards Nietian. The flames condensed into a blazing flame Qilin in the sky, and its wild aura shook the heavens and earth, leaving a trail of flames in the sky. Nietian looked calm, as usual, and there was even a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. The thunderbolt power around him was suddenly unleashed, and a thunderbolt dragon whizzed out, and the sound of the dragon's roar reverberated through the heavens and earth. On one side was the bloodline of the Qilin, and on the other side was the 9-star dragon vein. The two ancient powers were both extremely terrifying. Under the gaze of countless people, the blazing flame Qilin and the thunderbolt dragon collided with each other, and a terrifying force exploded in an instant, causing the void to tremble violently. Nietian felt waves of air rushing towards him, and he could not help but retreat. Nangong Ba was also forced to retreat, and the heavenly human territory around him was about to be broken apart. These two guys are so terrifying. The eyes of the crowd trembled, and their eyes became a little blurred. It was hard to believe that this was a battle between two young martial artists. The crowd was not surprised that Nangong Ba had displayed such terrifying power, but it was unbelievable that Nietian, who was a nobody, was able to fight evenly with Nangong Ba. Now's the time. At this moment, Yu Jingji's eyes trembled slightly, and his body moved, turning into a ray of light, and dashed into the sky. Dying! In midair, he locked his cold eyes on Nietian and threw a punch at him. Suddenly, the void was filled with terrifying dragon energy, which condensed into the shadow of a sharp claw and attacked Nietian. The sudden scene stunned the crowd, and they looked surprised. Watch out! Nizi-chun was the first to react, and he could not help but scream. Nietian was fighting with Nangong Ba, and if he was distracted to deal with Yu Jingji, he would definitely be seriously injured by Nangong Ba. And if he ignored Yu Jingji, he would definitely be seriously injured. At this moment, Nietian was in a dilemma. Little rat, don't you dare touch my master. At this moment, an angry roar was heard, and a figure soared into the sky, standing in the void like an iron tower. The person who appeared at this critical moment was none other than Han Tian. From the beginning to the end, Han Tian did not pay any attention to the battle between Nietian and Nangong Ba, and all his attention was on Yu Jingji. His figure appeared almost at the same time as Yu Jingji, but the latter was too focused on killing Nietian and did not notice him. Chapter 907. Han Tian's figure suddenly appeared. When the crowd saw this, their eyes narrowed. Yu Jingji saw Han Tian and was surprised. His eyes narrowed. Rumble. In the next moment, there was an explosion in the air. The claw shadow, formed by dragon energy, collided with the fist shadow. The surrounding space shook, and the two figures retreated dozens of meters. Yu Jingji steadied himself. When he saw Han Tian's petrified fists, he was shocked and speechless. You scoundrel, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Han Tian's aura was strong. His eyes were like fire as he stared at Yu Jingji. Who are these two people? The crowd looked at the two figures that suddenly appeared and was slightly surprised. Han Tian and Yu Jingji were also very strong. They were not much weaker than Nietian and Nangong Ba. The crowd felt strange. Why did so many young experts suddenly appear? No. Suddenly, Nizi-chun seemed to sense something. He fixed his eyes on Yu Jingji and was extremely surprised. This person also has dragon veins? Nizi-chun had never thought that he would meet another person with dragon veins. However, the dragon veins in Yu Jingji's body were much weaker than Nietian's. His dragon energy was also incomparable. Could there be more than one fated individual? Nizi-chun guessed. Her delicate face was very complicated. The Dragon Rebel clan had regarded Nietian as the fated individual because he had dragon veins in his body. Now, there was another person with dragon veins in his body. Nizi-chun was very confused. She did not know that almost everyone in the Abyss of Demons had dragon veins in their bodies. However, no one's dragon veins were as strong as Nietian's. Even the head of demons couldn't compare. Nizi-chun's eyes flickered violently. He stared at the figures in the air and did not know what would happen next. The crowd was also very surprised. Many people looked a little dumbfounded. Nietian and his three companions were all above the second tier of the sky human realm. They were all very young. Only geniuses like the Six Evils could have such strength at such a young age. It was rare to see four monstrous geniuses meeting together. At this moment, Nietian and Nangong Ba separated. Nietian's face was slightly pale, and there were many wounds on his body. He was actually burned by the blazing flame Chelan's flames. However, when he slightly circulated his vital meridians, a wave of heaven's divination true meaning appeared, and his wounds immediately healed. On the other hand, Nangongba was not injured at all. However, his expression was extremely gloomy and his eyes were filled with great anger. He hadn't expected that even with his bloodline power, he wouldn't be able to severely injure Nye Tian. At the same time, he sensed that Nye Tian hadn't used that terrifying power within his body. This undoubtedly meant that Nye Tian hadn't used his full strength in the battle just now. Nangongba felt insulted at this moment. A martial artist in the second tier of the heaven-human realm was actually not going all out to fight him. This was a humiliation to him. The Chelan bloodline is indeed powerful. Nye Tian was slightly surprised as he muttered. Although he didn't use the power of the stars, he had unleashed the power of the 9-star dragon vein to the extreme. Even under such circumstances, he was still at a disadvantage. This showed how terrifying the Chelan bloodline was. Suddenly, Nye Tian looked at Yu Jingji and said with a playful smile, "You've finally made your move. If I'm not mistaken, you're from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, right?" Yu Jingji was slightly stunned. He looked at Han Tian in front of him and immediately understood. He said, "You already knew that I would make my move." It was obvious that Han Tian had come prepared since he was able to react the moment he made his move. It seemed like Nye Tian had already arranged everything. Your killing intent is too obvious. I'm not an idiot. Of course, I have to prepare everything. Nye Tian smiled faintly. His eyes were filled with disdain. Since Yu Jingji was here, it meant that the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss had already received the message from Li Tianhao. The 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss had sent Yu Jingji to kill Nye Tian, which was enough to show that he was very powerful. It seems like I've underestimated you. Yu Jingji smiled darkly. The mask that covered half of his face trembled slightly. He had originally thought that Nye Tian was only talented. He didn't expect him to be so scheming. The corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched. He ignored Yu Jingji and said to Han Tian, "Han Tian, I'll leave this guy to you. Don't kill him. I want him alive." Up until now, Nye Tian knew nothing about the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. He wanted to learn something from Yu Jingji. Okay, Han Tian nodded. He then looked at Yu Jingji and said coldly, "You're very lucky. Master didn't let me kill you." Master, hearing this, Yu Jingji suddenly remembered what had just happened. He couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't expect the big guy in front of him to be Nye Tian's disciple. The crowd was also stunned. They looked at Nye Tian strangely. They didn't understand this strange master-disciple relationship. Arrogant. Yu Jingji calmed down and shouted angrily. Like a bolt of lightning, he released his dragon chi and charged at Han Tian. He was the top assassin in the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. He was naturally arrogant. He wouldn't allow others to look down on him. Good timing. Han Tian roared. His body expanded and his legs petrified. His imposing aura shook the heavens and the earth. Seeing Yu Jingji and Han Tian fighting, Nye Tian withdrew his gaze. He was confident in Han Tian. Even if he couldn't capture Yu Jingji alive, he would at least be able to protect himself. Nangongba, let's decide the winner with our next move. Nye Tian looked at Nangongba. He didn't want to waste any more time. He spoke coldly. His eyes were filled with absolute confidence. Good. That's what I wanted. Nangongba roared. The Overlord spear in his hand clanged. The flames around his body suddenly surged into the spear. The spear turned into a ball of flames in his hand. Seeing this, Nye Tian's eyes narrowed. Nangongba had merged his bloodline into the Overlord spear. This was equivalent to merging the spear soul with a blazing flame Chelan. The power that would be unleashed would be extremely terrifying. The next move will be Nangongba's most powerful attack. Nye Tian didn't show any fear. His eyes were firm and unwavering. Nangongba held the blazing flame spear in his hand. His entire body was engulfed in flames. He looked like the god of fire. The space within a few thousand meters turned into a sea of flames. Even the sky became violent. Nangongba His aura is so strong. The crowd felt the scorching aura coming from the sky. Their eyes trembled, and they all took a few steps back. Sister, will Brother Nyetian be a match for this guy? Enai jamming frowned and suddenly asked Enai Zichun, who was next to him. Speaking of which, everything started because of him. If he hadn't been curious and wanted to ask Nangong Ba some questions, the current situation wouldn't have happened. Don't worry, the destined one won't lose. Enai Zichun's beautiful eyes shone with a sharp light. She was very confident in Nyetian. Chapter 908. In the sky, Nangong Ba's silhouette was enveloped by a sea of fire. A blazing spear emerged from the sea of fire, and the light of the spear soared into the sky as if it wanted to tear the sky apart. Nyetian sensed the aura of the sea of fire in front of him, but he was pondering what he should use to defeat Nangong Ba. Given Nangong Ba's current condition, even a 7th-level astral soul might not be able to injure him. If he used the sky-shrouding totem, Nyetian was confident that he could directly trap Nangong Ba and kill him with a single strike. However, Nyetian didn't want to kill Nangong Ba. There was no enmity between the two of them. Besides, Nangong Ba had the bloodline of an ancient Qilin, which was extremely rare. It would be a pity to kill such a genius. At that moment, Nangong Ba's silhouette suddenly leapt into the air, and a sea of fire filled the sky. Swordsman, this was originally a technique prepared for Lin Feng. Now that you are using it on yourself, you should be proud. Nangong Ba raised the spear in his hand and shouted loudly. Flames surged in the sky like waves. 9 revolutions, Overlord Spear, Blazing Spear Spirit, Qilin Roar Die. As soon as the word die was uttered, boundless flames fell from the sky like a curtain, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Suddenly, a monstrous chi rolled down and the power of the sky changed. The entire sky seemed like it was going to collapse in an instant. The crowd was stunned when they saw the scene in the sky. The surging chi was too terrifying. Everyone's soul was under attack, and they felt like they were on fire. Nangong Ba's spear was too terrifying. Would Nyetian be able to withstand it? The crowd held their breaths and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They didn't even blink their eyes, as they didn't want to miss out on any exciting moment. Without a doubt, the next moment would determine the winner of this earth-shattering battle. In the sky, the sea of fire filled the air, and crackling sounds could be heard, as if it was burning. Roar! At the moment when the fire clouds were pressing down, an earth-shattering roar was heard. Following that, a 1,000-meter-long Qilin appeared and pounced towards Nyetian. At that moment, the space within a 1,000-meter radius was frozen and a boundless chi surged down. Standing in midair, Nyetian couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Nangong Ba's most powerful attack was more terrifying than he had expected. Nangong Ba, since you're using fire, I'll use fire too. In this critical moment of crisis, Nyetian summoned the power of the stars to summon a flaming cauldron. It was none other than the Hellfire Crucible. My lord, Monarch Corpsefall and the others were still in the Hellfire Crucible. Sherluo, I want to use the Starry Sky's sacred flame to fight against the blazing spear soul, Nyetian said, trembling as the Hellfire Crucible began to erupt with flames. The astral sage flame was born in the Hellfire Crucible and was far more terrifying than ordinary devil fire. Sage light erupted from the Hellfire Crucible, swirling around Nyetian as if it had a life of its own. Nyetian raised the long sword in his hand and absorbed all the starry sky, sacred flames around him. He was going to fuse his sword will with the starry sky, sacred flames to fight against Nangong Ba's blazing flame spear soul. As the starry sky, sacred flames surged into him, the heaven slash of the sword absolute slash released a sky-high sword radiance that shot thousands of meters away. At that moment, the fire Qilin in the void had arrived less than 100 meters away from Nyetian. Mad Doomsday reverse kill. Nyetian's eyes flashed with sharpness as he slashed down with the long sword in his hand. In the void, the sword will surged and the sword chi was sharp. A 1,000-meter sword shadow fell like a mountain. The only difference was that the sword shadow was surrounded by the crimson, starry sky, sacred flames. Boom! A deafening explosion sounded as the giant's sword hit the fire Cheelin. The latter's gigantic body froze for a moment. Boom! 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 In the next moment, countless explosions rang out, and the flame Cheelin's body began to crumble. Countless balls of flames shot out from the void, blasting in all directions. Walala! Under the impact of the power of the fire, the giant trees on the ground were all destroyed, and the rocks on the mountain couldn't bear the heat and directly exploded. The crowd retreated. Many people were injured by the explosion. Most people were still looking at the sky. Under countless gazes, the fire Cheelin finally couldn't bear it anymore. After a deafening explosion, its huge body exploded. Huh. Seeing this, Nyetion's eyes narrowed. The fire Cheelin's power was very strong. It could destroy everything within a 10-kilometer radius. The crowd below was also injured. Many of them weren't very strong. Even the dissipating flames couldn't withstand it. Boom! Nyetion didn't hesitate. Endless starlight gushed out from his back, and a huge net appeared. It was the heaven-shrouding totem. The heaven-shrouding totem spread out in all directions, enveloping the flames of the fire Cheelin. The moment the countless flames hit the heaven-shrouding totem, Nyetion's body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The power of the blazing flame spear soul was still extremely destructive even after it was destroyed. When the crowd saw the scene in midair, their tensed hearts finally relaxed. In the blink of an eye, the flames disappeared automatically. Nyetion retracted the heaven-shrouding totem and let out a long breath. Huh! Nangongba's face was as pale as a sheet. He looked at Nyetion and couldn't hide the fear in his heart. Nyetion wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, looked at Nangongba, and said, Nangongba, this move didn't decide the winner. Let's continue. Nangongbachi was stunned for a while. His eyes were gloomy, and his face was so gloomy that it looked like it was bleeding. Kill me. All of a sudden, Nangongba took a step forward and shouted in a loud voice. Huh! The crowd was stunned. They couldn't understand what was going on. Although Nyetion had blocked the attack of the blazing flame spear soul, Nangongba hadn't been defeated yet. He wouldn't be seeking death. Nangongba, you haven't lost yet? Nyetion asked calmly with a sharp gaze. Nangongba looked at Nyetion with a burning gaze and said coldly, I, Nangongba, am not a shameless person. You had the chance to kill me with a single move just now, but you chose to save those useless people. This is your choice, and it has nothing to do with me. However, your strength is indeed above mine. I have nothing to say about this defeat. Nangongba had used all his strength in the previous move, but it was blocked by Nyetion. Even the fire Cheelin was destroyed. If Nyetion hadn't used the heaven-shrouding totem to save those people, he would have had the chance to kill Nangongba with a single move. Nangongba was aware of this, but Nyetion was even more aware of this. However, as Nangongba had said, this was Nyetion's own choice, and it had nothing to do with others. Therefore, Nyetion had to continue the battle. Before we fought, I said that if you defeated me, you could kill me. I, Nangongba, am not a person who is afraid of death. I can die, but my spear soul can't be humiliated. Do it, Nangongba said as he slowly closed his eyes. His expression was filled with determination. Chapter 909. Nyetion looked at Nangongba and was stupefied. Nangongba was asking to die, which was beyond his expectation. Nangongba admitted defeat. The crowd was astonished. Who would have thought that Nangongba, one of the 6 evils, would admit defeat and ask to die? Everyone was astonished by the dramatic turn of events. At first, most people thought that Nangongba would win the duel, but they didn't expect the result to be like this. Who was Nyetion? How could he make Nangongba admit defeat? It was unbelievable. The crowd's gazes became strange and complicated, and they were greatly shocked in their hearts. Nyetion's eyes twinkled. Actually, the crowd didn't really know how strong Nangongba was. Everyone thought that Nangongba's 9 revolutions Overlord Spear was powerful, but Nyetion knew that Nangongba's most powerful ability was the Kirin Blood. Nangon Ba made Nyetian feel pressured. Not even King Northhell could do that. Nangon Ba, I don't want to kill you. I just want you to apologize to my friend, said Nyetian indifferently. Nangon Ba had the Kirin blood. It would be a pity if he died like that. Besides, he was from the godly Martial Palace, which was an organization comparable to the Holy Light Dynasty and the 10,000 Demons Abyss. Nyetian didn't want to offend the godly Martial Palace because of Nangon Ba. Apologize? Nangon Ba opened his eyes and said in a cold tone, I, Nangon Ba, would rather die than be humiliated. That guy provoked me first. I don't need to apologize. Provoke you? Nyetian was also taken aback. Then he laughed and said, You can leave now. It seemed like Nangon Ba had misunderstood Ni Jianming. Nyetian didn't want to explain too much. You're letting me go? Nangon Ba didn't understand what Nyetian was doing. He thought that Nyetian would kill him. After all, if he was in Nyetian's shoes, he would never allow such a strong enemy to live. Nangon Ba turned around and was about to leave. He wasn't afraid of death, but he didn't want to die because he had many things to do, such as challenging Lin Feng. Why? However, he had just taken a step when his figure stopped, and he asked with a frown. He wanted to know why Nyetian had let him go. Nyetian faintly smiled and said, There is no deep hatred between us. You said that my friend and I are weak. I have already proved that I am not weak. That is enough. What's your name? Nangon Ba suddenly asked with a frown. Nyetian. Nyetian became cold replied. All right, I'll remember you. Nangon Ba nodded his head. After he finished speaking, he did not stay any longer. His figure moved, and he left immediately. Looking at Nangon Ba's figure, Nyetian's lips curled up into a smile. In fact, the reason he let him go was not just because the latter was talented, but also because he had his own considerations. Nangon Ba challenging Lin Feng was a big event for Celestial Sword Pavilion. It would attract a lot of attention. In this way, Nyetian could look for Wang Yiping without worry. Nyetian gazed into the distance. Han Tian and Yu Jingji's battle was still going on. Their strengths were almost the same, but Han Tian had the advantage of a cultivation body, so he was not afraid of Yu Jingji's attacks. He was gradually gaining the upper hand. However, Han Tian remembered Nyetian's words, so he didn't dare kill Yu Jingji. Nyetian's silhouette flickered, and he joined the battle. Boom! He struck with his sword, and a mighty sword will rolled over. Each sword was extremely sharp, leaving a glaring sword mark in the void. A powerful killing aura descended directly, pressing down on Yu Jingji. Yu Jingji was fighting against Han Tian when he suddenly sensed the deadly qi. His pupil shrank, and he wanted to block it, but Han Tian's gigantic fist moved towards him at the same time. Yu Jingji was surrounded by enemies from both sides. He looked panicked. However, the panic in his eyes disappeared and was replaced by a ferocious look. At this moment, he suddenly took off the mask on his face, revealing half of his face that had been covered all along. When he took off his mask, a terrifying evil strength appeared. Black lights appeared in the sky and quickly turned into a gigantic black net. Nyetian couldn't help but narrow his eyes when he saw half of Yu Jingji's face. That half of his face was sunken in, and a black vortex could be seen in the center of his cheek, emanating waves of terrifying evil energy. Nyetian suddenly felt the terrible power contained in the black vortex. His eyes suddenly trembled, and his heart suddenly sank. He thought of an extremely terrible thing. Saint's bone. Nyetian, you forced me to do this, Dai. At this moment, Yu Jingji roared, and the net of evil energy suddenly expanded. Countless black blades appeared in the void, covering the sky as they came crashing down. Not good. Nyetian's eyes darkened. He activated the ultimate Fire Scarlet Heaven armor and the Dragon Scale shield. Even so, the black blades seemed to have a strong penetrating power. They could not stop them from penetrating Nyetian's body. Nyetian's face darkened. The dark, evil strength was rampaging in his body, attacking his limbs and veins. He was in great pain. Han Tian had the heavenly stone body, but he was also being attacked by the dark, evil strength. His tense face could not hide the pain. Die. Yu Jingji saw that Nie Tian was injured and screamed. The black whirlpool on his face became even more violent. The dark, evil strength condensed into a black claw and slashed down. Holy rainbow, heavenly retribution. At that critical moment, Nie Tian shouted and released a huge amount of star power. A beam of holy rainbow appeared. It was like a sharp blade that pierced through the sky and broke the black claw in the sky. Not good. Yu Jingji saw that the situation was not good and screamed. He quickly retreated, but he was still hit by the holy rainbow. His right arm was pierced and blood flowed out. After failing to kill him, Yu Jingji didn't dare to linger. With these words, he blurred into motion and left. Nie Tian, we'll meet again. Nie Tian looked at his opponent's back, and his eyes darkened. The dragon vein in his body revolved, slowly forcing the dark, evil strength out. He spat out a mouthful of dirty blood, and his complexion improved. This dark, evil strength was very scary. Even his thunder power could not devour it. It could only force it out. Nie Tian immediately flashed to Han Tian's side. He sent a wave of origin power into Han Tian to help him force the evil strength out. Han Tian spat out a mouthful of dirty blood, and his complexion improved. He looked at Nie Tian and said guiltily, "Teacher, I am useless. He escaped. It is not your fault. I misjudged his strength." Nie Tian shook his head, and his expression was serious. The crowd below was stunned by the scene in the sky. They could not react for a long time. Even Nangong Ba admitted defeat and asked for death. Who was the masked man to injure Nie Tian? Nie Tian did not explain much. He landed beside Jean de Bayo and the others with Han Tian. "Nie Tian, are you all right?" Niz Chun stepped forward. Her charming face was filled with worry, but at the same time, there was an unconcealable seriousness. "We are fine. Let's leave here first." Nie Tian nodded. He did not notice Niz Chen's expression. He was still thinking about what had happened. Chapter 9-10. Saint Bone. Nie Tian was very sure that the half of Yu Jingji's face under the mask was the Saint Bone. Saints were legendary existences that were even more terrifying than deity realm martial artists. The so-called Saint Bone was the remains of a saint after they fell. It was indestructible, and even after a long period of time, it still possessed powerful strength. The Saint era was an era that was even more ancient than the ancient era. Nie Tian didn't know why saints fell. Perhaps it was because they killed each other. When he was in the heavenly realm, Nie Tian had seen a real Saint Bone. It was an arm bone that belonged to the Snow Emperor of the 9 Emperors. It was because of the Saint Bone that the Snow Emperor had the strength to suppress other great emperors. However, Saint Bones would usually reject martial artists. Those who could fuse with Saint Bones were all people with extremely special physiques. Nie Tian remembered that the reason why the Snow Emperor could fuse with the Saint Bone was because he had a very special heaven-ranked spirit physique, Snow Cloud Saint physique. But strangely, Nie Tian didn't sense any heaven and earth spiritual physique aura from Yu Jingji's body. It was really strange how the latter could fuse with the Saint Bone. However, Nie Tian could see that Yu Jingji's fusion with the Saint Bone wasn't complete. He was far from being able to unleash the true power of the Saint Bone. Otherwise, with his current strength, he wouldn't be able to contend against the Saint Bone. This Dragon Abyss assassin seems to have an extraordinary secret. I hope he will appear again. Nie Tian's eyes were cold and revealed a strange expression. As long as Yu Jingji appeared again, Nie Tian definitely wouldn't let him escape again. After leaving the valley, Nie Tian and the rest immediately went to the Sky Sword Pavilion. He had to find Wang Yiping as soon as possible. Along the way, Nie Tian quickly discovered that many powerful people appeared. They were very secretive and kept a low profile. Nie Tian asked Lishan and confirmed that these people weren't from the Sky Sword Pavilion. He couldn't help but pay more attention to them. However, these people were very careful and didn't do anything wrong. Nie Tian couldn't figure out what they wanted to do. In the evening, everyone finally arrived at the Sky Sword Pavilion. Lushan asked the people from the Sky Sword Pavilion to arrange accommodation for Nie Tian and the rest. She planned to let Nye Tian meet Pavilion Master Luling Yun the next day. Saint's Bone. In the small courtyard, Nye Tian was still thinking about what happened during the day. He was still thinking about the Saint's Bone. Who is it? At this moment, he suddenly raised his head, sensing that someone was approaching. It's me. A clear and melodious voice rang out. Ni Zichen's figure appeared in front of Nye Tian. Miss Zichen. Nye Tian saw that it was Ni Zichen and smiled. Why are you here so late at night? Is something the matter? Yes. Ni Zichen was very direct. It's about your identity as the Destined One. Nye Tian was slightly stunned. He didn't know why Ni Zichen suddenly asked about this. Today, the masked man also has the dragon vein in his body. What's going on? Ni Zichen did not waste any time and asked directly. That's what you want to ask. Nye Tian slightly smiled and immediately understood. It seemed that Ni Zichen also thought that the Dragon Abyss assassins were destined ones. Nye Tian thought about it and decided not to hide it anymore. He completely explained how he obtained the dragon vein and dragon ring. He also introduced the Dragon Abyss. In the end, he said, I don't know what kind of organization the Dragon Abyss is, but I know that the people there all have dragon rings on their hands. It is the dragon rings that allow them to nurture the dragon vein in their body. Dragon ring? Ni Zichen frowned and couldn't hide her surprise. She didn't expect that Nye Tian's dragon vein was not born, but acquired. This was even stranger. If Nye Tian was not born with the dragon vein, then it meant that he was not the Destined One. However, this didn't make sense because Ni Chiefeng clearly predicted the arrival of the Destined One, and Nye Tian's group appeared at that time. Of all the people who appeared at that time, only Nye Tian had the dragon vein in his body, so he was considered the Destined One by the rebel dragon tribe. The more Ni Zichen thought about it, the more confused she became. Her pretty face frowned. Is it that important whether I am the Destined One or not? Nye Tian saw Ni Zichen's confused expression and couldn't help but laugh. Of course it is. Ni Zichen didn't hesitate and said loudly, if you're not the Destined One, then there must be others. If the real Destined One appears, then won't the rebel dragon tribe be in danger? Nye Tian was speechless and didn't know what to say. He had never believed in the rebel dragon tribe's prophecies and the Destined One. He didn't believe in fate. He only believed in himself. As long as the rebel dragon tribe thinks that I am the Destined One, then I am the Destined One. Nye Tian faintly smiled and said, and I think that the fate of the rebel dragon tribe should be controlled by the rebel dragon tribe and not given to a Destined One who might not even exist. Ni Zichen looked at Nye Tian. Her beautiful eyes flickered and slightly moved. She didn't say anything for a long time. After a while, Ni Zichen suddenly thought of something and asked, you just said that in the abyss of dragons of demons, does everyone have a dragon ring? I don't know about that. Nye Tian slightly shook his head and said, but I have seen 2 people with dragon rings. Ni Zichen nodded and said, can I take a look at your dragon ring? Of course. Nye Tian took out his spirit dragon ring and gave it to Ni Zichen. What a terrifying seal! Ni Zichen exclaimed before touching the dragon ring. Her delicate face froze for a moment. After taking the dragon ring, she carefully sensed it. After a long time, Ni Zichen returned the spirit dragon ring to Nye Tian with a serious expression. Did you find anything? Nye Tian saw Ni Zichen's reaction and couldn't help but ask. Ni Zichen was stunned at first, then immediately shook her head and said, there is a huge seal in this dragon ring. Other than that, I can't see anything. Nye Tian frowned. He could see that Ni Zichen must have found something, but she didn't want to say it. It was obvious that she was deliberately hiding it. If Ni Zichen didn't want to say it, Nye Tian couldn't force her. Maybe it was something related to the rebel dragon tribe, but he wasn't very interested. Nye Tian suddenly thought of something and took out another dragon ring and said, this is the dragon ring I got from a person in the abyss of dragons of demons. It's useless for me to keep it. Maybe you'll be interested, so I'll give it to you. Ni Zichen's beautiful eyes flashed, revealing a burning look. She immediately took the dragon ring and said, thank you. Thank you. Nye Tian was stunned again. Ni Zichen was a more mature girl, and rarely acted like this. It seemed that she did find something unusual from the dragon ring. Niz put away the dragon ring. Tian wanted to ask her about the saint's bone. Maybe she would know something, but at this time, Tian suddenly felt an aura appear. He suddenly looked up and saw a black shadow flash by in the sky. It was extremely fast and seemed to be heading towards a high tower. Chapter 9:11. Tian, what's wrong? Niz noticed that Tian's expression wasn't right and asked in surprise. I'm fine. Tian smiled faintly and said, It's getting late. Go back and rest. Niz was slightly stunned. She felt like she was being banished, but she didn't show any displeasure. She nodded slightly and left. After Niz left, Tian's figure flickered, and he chased in the direction that the figure disappeared. Who is it that dares to break into Sky Sword Pavilion at night? Tian was puzzled. He sped up and restrained his aura to the extreme. His mental energy was very strong. Not only was his perception strong, but his control of the origin power in his body was also extremely precise. His method of hiding his aura was no weaker than a professional killer's. Following the aura, Tian quickly arrived in front of a tall tower and stood in midair. The aura disappeared here. It seems that the person entered the tower. Tian's eyes narrowed as he pondered whether to enter the tower or not. After all, this was Sky Sword Pavilion's territory, and he was a guest. It wasn't good for him to barge in. Moreover, this tower was strange. It seemed to be protected by a sword array. If he forced his way in, he might be discovered. After thinking for a while, Tian decided to enter. He had a feeling that the person who trespassed the sword tower was related to the unknown cultivators during the day. Tian connected the two events together and smelled a hint of a conspiracy. After making up his mind, Tian spread out his divine sense and sensed the aura outside the sword tower. As expected, there was a sword array protecting it. Soon, he found the weakest point of the sword array. It seemed that the person had entered the sword array from there. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Tian's figure flashed, and he directly entered the sword pagoda. Almost at the same time, there was a sudden sound of killing outside the sword tower. Countless sword shadows shot out and swept through the void. In the next moment, another figure entered. Tian was shocked. He quickly restrained his aura and hid in the darkness. Fortunately, the person didn't discover him. Bastard! Suddenly, a low voice resounded and reprimanded. Be more careful next time. This subordinate knows his mistake. The person who was reprimanded spoke in a very soft voice, as if he was very afraid. Hearing this voice, Tian's eyes suddenly darkened. He seemed to have heard this voice before, but he couldn't remember where. Yunba, Chun Haoyu, how are the preparations for the matter that I've ordered? A moment later, the deep voice rang out again, and this time, it called out two names. Yunba, Chun Haoyu. Hearing these two names, Tian's heart sank. He had heard Mo Biming mention these two people before. They were two of the four kings of the heavenly demon cult. On the surface, Yunba was the patriarch of the Yun family, one of the four great families of the Black Moon Empire, but in reality, he was the southern overlord of the heavenly demon cult. On the surface, Chun Haoyu was the vice sect leader of the Heaven Severing sect, but in reality, he was the West King of the heavenly demon cult. The voice that Tian had just heard was Yunba's voice. Before Tian went to the forbidden land of wind and cloud, he had seen Yunba once and heard the latter's voice. Could it be? At this moment, Tian suddenly thought of something and was shocked. The person who spoke is the vice-hierarch of the heavenly demon cult, Wang Yiping. The person who spoke referred to himself as the hierarch, and his status was obviously higher than Yunba and Chun Haoyu. It was very likely that he was Wang Yiping. Lord Vice-Hierarch, everything is ready. Yunba's voice sounded, and his tone was very cautious. It really is Wang Yiping. Tian's heart quivered, and he seemed a little excited. He had guessed correctly. The person who spoke to Yunba and Chun Haoyu was the vice-hierarch of the heavenly demon cult, Wang Yiping. At the same time, Wang Yiping also had a superficial identity, the the vice pavilion leader of the Heavenly Sword Pavilion. Very good. Wang Yiping nodded faintly and then said, "Without my order, no one is allowed to act recklessly." Understood? Understood. Yin Ba spoke again. "The leader of the Heaven Sword Pavilion is very strong. I will be careful." Wang Yiping's lips curled up coldly, but she shook her head and said, "Liling Yun's strength is only at the 6th level of the Heaven Realm. I can kill him by myself. The most troublesome one is the Heaven Sword Ancestor. That old monster already had the strength of the 7th level of the Heaven Realm 100 years ago. He has been in seclusion for the past 100 years. I wonder if he has made a breakthrough." Speaking up to here, Wang Yiping sighed softly and said, "If we want to take down the Heaven Sword Pavilion, the Hierarch must make a move personally. Before the Hierarch arrives, no one is allowed to give themselves away." "Yes." Yin Ba and Chun Haoyu nodded in unison, respectfully. When Wang Yiping mentioned the two words Hierarch, the two of them had a frightened expression, as if they were very afraid of the Hierarch. "All right, you two can leave. Without my order, no one is allowed to step into the Heaven Sword Pavilion." Wang Yiping nodded heavily, and a murderous intent appeared on her cold face. Yin Ba and Chun Haoyu didn't dare to stay any longer and directly left the Sword Pagoda. Looking at their figures, Wang Yiping's lips curled into a sneer, and she murmured, "Liling Yun, you have been the Sky Sword Pavilion Lord for such a long time. This position should have been changed." After saying that, his aura also gradually disappeared. Nietan withdrew all his aura, not daring to be careless. After waiting for a few minutes and making sure there was no movement around, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. Nietan had heard the entire conversation between Wang Yiping and the other two just now. Now he completely understood that those unknown martial artists he met during the day were from the Heavenly Demon Cult. The Heavenly Demon Cult was going to take action against the Heaven Sword Pavilion. The Heavenly Demon Cult first destroyed the Black Moon Empire, and now they wanted to take action against the Heaven Sword Pavilion. It seemed that they were very ambitious. No wonder Yu Rushuang didn't appear in the Black Moon Imperial City. It turned out that she not only wanted to control the Black Moon Empire, but also the surrounding forces. Chun Haoyu was the deputy sectmaster of the Heaven Severing Sect. Perhaps after the Heaven Sword Pavilion was destroyed, the Heaven Severing Sect would be next. If the Heavenly Demon Cult could control the surrounding 5 forces, it would be enough to contend with the Sacred Light Empire. Nietan had underestimated Yu Rushuang. The latter dared to kill the people of the Alchemist Guild and the Craftsman Guild, not because she was crazy, but because she wanted more. "I must inform the Sky Sword Pavilion Lord of this matter as soon as possible." Nietan let out a long sigh and calmed himself down. His figure flashed, and he immediately left the Sword Pagoda. "Who is it?" However, just as Nietan's figure rushed out of the Sword Pagoda, an angry shout suddenly rang out from the ground. Damn it! Nietan's heart sank. He knew that the situation was not good, so he couldn't care less. The proud sword Heaven Wings appeared on his back, and he sped up. With a leap, he was already 1,000 meters away. "You're courting death by trespassing into the Heaven Sword Pavilion." However, the person below had no intention of letting him go. With a roar, his figure soared into the sky. He was even faster than Nietan as he chased after him. "Stay here!" The person shouted and stabbed out with his sword. Sword light blossomed in the air, and the dazzling sword radiance shot out 1,000 meters away. Its speed was extremely fast as it attacked Nietan. At the same time, a figure flashed out of the Sword Pagoda. It was Wang Yiping. Chapter 9:12. Wang Yiping came out of the sword tower and saw a silhouette flash by. Surprisingly, it was Lin Feng. Lin Feng, what is he doing here? Wang Yiping only saw Lin Feng's silhouette. He didn't see Nietan. He frowned, and his heart sank. If Lin Feng had heard what they were talking about, it would have been terrible. He probably didn't hear anything. He can't know what happened inside the tower, said Wang Yiping, trying to calm himself down. If Lin Feng hadn't entered the tower, he wouldn't have been able to hear what they were talking about. Wang Yiping was sure that no one would be able to sneak into the Sword Pagoda under his nose. When Wang Yiping thought about that, he felt relieved. There are 3 more days until I come out. I have to stay in the tower for 3 more days, whispered Wang Yiping. His silhouette flickered, and he went back into the tower. To the outside world, Wang Yiping had been practicing cultivation the whole time, but he had been secretly plotting something. If someone saw him coming out of the tower, it wouldn't be good. On the other side, in the air, 2 silhouettes were chasing each other. Nie Tian dodged Lin Feng's sword light. His entire body's qi rose sharply, and his speed increased even more. Unfortunately, Lin Feng wasn't slow either. After a few seconds, Lin Feng was less than 100 meters away from Nie Tian. Nie Tian was surprised to see that Lin Feng was the only one chasing him. He took a deep breath. "Your Excellency, who are you? What do you want?" When Lin Feng saw that Nie Tian had stopped, he also stabilized his body. His sword energy was condensing around his body. If Nie Tian moved, Lin Feng would immediately attack. Nie Tian was surprised when he saw the face of the person in front of him. He hadn't thought that the person would be so young. He looked like he was in his early 20s. He was handsome, and his facial features were resolute, giving off a sense of righteousness and righteousness. He's so young, and he has already broken through to the 5th Tian level. Could he be? Thought Nie Tian. A name appeared in his mind. Lin Feng, the sword freak. In his 20s, his strength had already reached the 5th layer celestial human realm. His talent was definitely above that of Nangong Ba, one of the 6 evils. "Are you Lin Feng?" asked Nie Tian. He was stupefied. Nie Tian had the feeling that Lin Feng and Lin Feng were very similar. He didn't know if it was because their names were similar. "I'll ask you again. What are your intentions for barging into the Sky Sword Pavilion at night?" Lin Feng frowned and didn't reply to Nie Tian's question. His entire body released a pure sword energy, which then transformed into a rainbow, which dashed into the sky. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Soon after, he smiled. This fellow was very courteous and did not attack directly. That sword strike just now was clearly a show of force. But Lin Feng's sword cultivation level was monstrously high. It seemed like he had already broken through to the very top of the sword spirit level. He only needed one more opportunity to break through to the sword soul level. To be able to attain such a realm in the sword Tao at such a young age, he could absolutely be called a peerless genius. If Lin Feng had the opportunity to become a godly cultivator in the heaven world, he would definitely become as strong as the 5 great cultivators of the celestial sword sect. "I'm Lushan's friend," replied Nie Tian while smiling indifferently and nodding. "Sister Lushan's friend?" Lin Feng was surprised. His facial expression suddenly changed as if he had sensed something. He asked, "Are you a swordsman?" "I know a bit about the sword," replied Nie Tian modestly. Since Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry to attack, he had to be friendly. "Very good." But at that moment, a strange smile appeared on Lin Feng's face. Immediately after, he said, "I want to see if you're telling the truth or not." "How?" Nie Tian was a bit surprised. He didn't understand. "Bzzz." Lin Feng's silhouette flickered, and he unsheathed his long sword. The sound of the sword resonated through the night sky. It seemed like it had the power to pierce through the clouds and break the silence of the night. "Oh." Nie Tian's eyes twinkled. He smiled and said, "You want to test my sword energy?" "Indeed." Lin Feng slightly nodded, and in a flash, his facial expression became solemn and solemn. It was as if he had changed into another person. He then said coldly, "Attack." "All right." Nie Tian nodded and smiled. He also wanted to see how strong the legendary swordsman, one of the 3 kings, was. Both of them moved back at the same time. They were a few thousand meters away from each other. A skilled swordsman could listen to the sword intent and the heart of the sword to comprehend the way of the sword. If a swordsman's sword energy and heart weren't pure, it meant that he wasn't a good person. Lin Feng wanted to test Nie Tian's sword energy and heart. If his heart wasn't pure, Lin Feng wouldn't hesitate to kill him. Looking at Lin Feng, Nie Tian completely relaxed and immersed himself in the way of the sword. An enormous sword intent began to spread out from his body, circling around him and spreading out in all directions. Lin Feng looked cold and detached. His entire body was releasing sword energy, but it wasn't as powerful as Nietion's. Instead, it seemed simple and direct. What a pure sword energy! When Nietion sensed his opponent's sword energy, he couldn't help but frown. Lin Feng's sword intent wasn't exaggerated in the slightest. Instead, it was absolutely pure. Although it looked very ordinary, the terrifying power contained within it could be imagined. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the next moment, both of them moved their swords at the same time. Two waves of sword chi pierced through the air and collided against each other. The sound of the collision wasn't loud, it was clear and bright. It seemed like the sound of the sword was resonating in the air. Both of them moved back at the same time. They raised their heads and looked at each other. Nietion was surprised that Lin Feng's sword energy was so pure. Lin Feng's sword cultivation was terrifying. Lin Feng was surprised that Nietion was only a sword spirit, but his sword chi wasn't any weaker than Lin Feng's. A moment before, both of them had used pure sword chi. Both of them hadn't used any pure chi or any sword skills. Nietion was stupefied. He put away his sword and smiled indifferently. It seems like you really are Lin Feng. Lin Feng was so young and had such a high level of sword cultivation. He must be the legendary Lin Feng. Lin Feng put away his dragon sword and said, I am indeed Lin Feng. Your Excellency's sword energy is extremely pure. You're definitely not an evil person. I apologize for offending you just now. Please forgive me. You are too polite. Nietion indifferently nodded. He was speechless. Lin Feng seemed like an ancient cultivator. He was extremely polite and courteous. But Lishan had told him that Lin Feng was obsessed with swords. He rarely talked to people. It was normal for him to be a bit slow. At that moment, Lin Feng looked at Nietion. It was obvious that he wasn't good with words. He smiled and said, May I ask your name, Your Excellency? Nietion. Nietion slightly nodded. All right, Brother Nye, I will take my leave. Lin Feng nodded and was about to leave. Nietion was speechless. Lin Feng surprisingly didn't ask him why he had come out of the sword tower. Brother Lin, don't you want to know why I came out of the sword tower? Nietion asked helplessly. Chapter 9:13. Lin Feng turned around and was about to leave. Nietion's face darkened as he blurred into action and appeared by his side. Without saying another word, he said, Brother Lin, there's something I need to tell you. Lin Feng suddenly remembered something and said, Brother Nye, I remember that Wang Fu is practicing in the sword tower. He doesn't allow anyone to get close to him. How did you get out of the tower? The corner of Nietion's mouth curled up into a helpless smile. This guy had finally come to his senses and realized the problem. Nietion told Lin Feng what he had just seen. From time to time, he would pay attention to Lin Feng's facial expression, worried that Lin Feng wouldn't believe him. However, during the whole process, Lin Feng's expression was as calm as still water, without the slightest ripple. Only after Nietion finished did he nod with a slightly nervous expression and say, This matter is of great importance and concerns the survival of the Heaven Sword Pavilion. We must inform the sect master and the patriarch. You believe me? Nietion was taken aback and couldn't help but ask. Yes. Lin Feng nodded and said, Your sword heart is pure. You can't lie. I believe you. Nietion couldn't help but smile. This guy was very confident in his judgment. Are you going to tell the leader of the Heaven Sword Pavilion now? Asked Nietion, smiling when he saw that Lin Feng was about to leave. Yes. Lin Feng was nervous and said, There's no time to waste. We have to tell the leader immediately. All right, I'll go with you, said Nietion. He wanted to go with Lin Feng to see the Celestial Sword Pavilion's leader. After a short time, Lin Feng took Nietion to the Celestial Sword Pavilion. Who's there? As soon as the two of them appeared, the two swordsmen guarding outside the hall shouted angrily. Immediately, two sword intents whizzed through the air. The sword light lit up half the night sky, dazzling and blinding. It's me. Without waiting for Nietion to make a move, Lin Feng shouted indifferently. His hand lightly streaked across the air, and the two sword energies were absorbed by him. You're Lin Feng? The two swordsmen were stupefied. They were staring at Lin Feng for a long time before confirming his identity, said Nye Tian while smiling. It seemed like Lin Feng really didn't show up very often. The disciples of the pavilion didn't even recognize him. Is the leader there? Asked Lin Feng while slightly nodding. The minister is in the main hall. You can go and see him, but you can't come in, said the two swordsmen while indicating for Lin Feng to come in. However, they stopped Nye Tian. Lin Feng looked at Nye Tian and said apologetically, Nye Tian, brother, please wait here for a moment. I will go and ask the leader if he wants to see you. All right. Nye Tian didn't know what to say. Lin Feng was a very old-fashioned person. He had to follow the rules. Lin Feng wasn't in the Celestial Sword Palace. Nye Tian was waiting outside. Friends outside, please enter the main hall. A moment later, a grand voice rang out from the main hall. Please. The two swordsmen were stupefied. They didn't know what Nye Tian's social status was. Surprisingly, the leader had spoken to them. The Celestial Sword Palace was the most important place in the Celestial Sword Pavilion apart from the Sword Grave. The Celestial Sword Pavilion was the most important place in the Celestial Sword Pavilion. Outsiders were not allowed to enter. With a faint smile, Nye Tian strode into the Grand Hall. Only after entering the hall did Nye Tian realize that the hall was much larger than it looked from the outside. Furthermore, it was very tall, at least 30 meters tall. The stone pillars surrounding it were very strange. They weren't round, but sword-shaped, like giant swords that pierced through the sky, sharp and straight. Nye Tian walked towards the center of the main hall and saw Lin Feng. Behind him was a middle-aged man in white clothes. He was slightly fat and had a pleasant smile on his face. He looked very kind and friendly. That middle-aged man was the leader of the Celestial Sword Pavilion, Ling Yun. You must be Mr. Nye Tian, right? Ling Yun didn't wait for Nye Tian to say anything. He was already walking towards him and smiling. Leader. Nye Tian nodded and smiled. He wouldn't have thought that the leader of the Celestial Sword Pavilion would be so friendly. He had thought that the leader of the Celestial Sword Pavilion would be a tall and sturdy man. However, the person in front of him was completely different. He didn't look like a leader at all. Ling Yun was very similar to Jean de Bao's father. They were both extremely amiable people who made others feel comfortable and comfortable. I've heard about Mr. Nye Tian from Sun Hai. Now that I've met you, you're indeed a young genius, said Ling Yun while smiling. Leader, you flatter me, said Nye Tian while nodding and smiling. He wasn't used to Ling Yun's enthusiasm. Ling Yun motioned for Nye Tian to sit down and said, My daughter, Lu Shan, was in the forbidden area of wind and cloud. Thank you for taking care of me. As for what happened with Siko and Wuji, I hope that you won't take it to heart. It's all because I didn't teach my daughter well. Please forgive me. Leader, you're too polite, said Nye Tian. He had already prepared an excuse to make Ling Yun believe him. However, Ling Yun was so polite and didn't mention anything about Wang Yiping. Nye Tian didn't know what to do. Lin Feng was also surprised. He hadn't thought that Ling Yun would have heard of Nye Tian before. It seemed like he knew Nye Tian very well. Leader, did Lin Feng tell you what happened in the sword tower? Said Nye Tian. He didn't want to waste time with Ling Yun. Yes, Lin Feng did. Ling Yun nodded with a solemn expression and said, Mr. Nye, the matter you just mentioned is very big and very important. If it turns out to be true, I will punish Wang Bao. You don't believe me? Nye Tian frowned, his face growing grim. It turned out that Ling Yun didn't believe him. Ling Yun's smile disappeared. He remained silent for a moment and said, Mr. Nye, do you know what my relationship with Wang Bao is? I don't, said Nye Tian while shaking his head. He knew that it wasn't that simple. We are sworn brothers, said Ling Yun while looking at Ling Yun. He then said, We have been through life and death together many times, and he has saved my life. Nye Tian looked at Ling Yun and said, So you don't believe me? Yes, said Ling Yun while nodding. Mr. Nye, if you were me and someone suddenly appeared and said that your good brother wanted to kill you, would you believe it? Nye Tian frowned. He couldn't answer that question. Ling Yun was right. If someone told him that Jean de Bao wanted to kill him, he wouldn't believe it either. Mr. Nye, I know that there are some conflicts between you and Wang Bao, but you shouldn't slander him, said Lil Ling Yun when he saw that Niet Tian didn't say anything. You saved my daughter before, and I am very grateful. But if you want to overthrow Sky Sword Pavilion, I will never allow it. As he finished speaking, Lil Ling Yun's tone had already become extremely low and deep, and his eyes were also suppressing his anger. Huh? Niet Tian could sense Lil Ling Yun's anger, and his expression changed. Chapter 9:14. Niet Tian pulled a long face. He finally understood why Lil Ling Yun had been so nice to him, but hadn't mentioned anything about what had happened in the Sword Tower. Lil Ling Yun didn't believe him at all. Lil Ling Yun must have known about what had happened between Wang Yiping and Niet Tian. Logically speaking, it was indeed possible that Niet Tian was slandering Wang Yiping. After all, he had killed Wang Yiping's 2 sons. He was afraid that Wang Yiping would take revenge. But Niet Tian didn't like Lil Ling Yun's smiling face. He said one thing, but in his heart, he thought another. Now that they were talking openly, at least they didn't have to restrain themselves anymore. Leader, Niet Tian isn't the kind of person who spreads rumors. At that moment, Lin Feng didn't wait for Niet Tian to speak. He didn't know what had happened between Niet Tian and Wang Yiping, but he believed in Niet Tian's character. Do you really believe him? Lil Ling Yun was stupefied. He was looking at Lin Feng in a strange way. Yes. Lin Feng nodded and said, To tell you the truth, I have noticed that there are many people around the Sword Tower. Therefore, I have been practicing my swordsmanship near the Sword Tower for the past few days. I have been observing the situation outside the Sword Tower, but I haven't been able to catch anyone yet. When Lil Ling Yun heard Lin Feng, he frowned and said in a cold tone, You are spying on Wang Yiping. Spying? Lil Ling Yun's words made Niet Tian frown. It seemed like Lil Ling Yun and Wang Yiping really had a special relationship. He trusted Wang Yiping a lot. I didn't. Lin Feng hurriedly said, I just don't want people to disturb Wang Yiping's practice. I just want to protect. Nonsense. Lil Ling Yun didn't wait for Lin Feng to finish and interrupted him. Pavilion Master. Lin Feng's face was slightly nervous, and he wanted to say something. You don't need to talk anymore. You can leave. I will pretend that nothing happened today, said Lil Ling Yun, interrupting Lin Feng again. That? Lin Feng looked embarrassed. He didn't know what to say. Lin Feng, let's go. Niet Tian's eyes were calm and cold. With Lil Ling Yun's personality, it was useless to say anything. It was better to leave as soon as possible. Lin Feng hesitated for a while, but when he saw that Lil Ling Yun was still furious, he gave up. He slightly bowed and said, Mr. Lin Feng will leave now. Lil Ling Yun had his back to the 2 of them and did not speak. Niet Tian and Lin Feng did not stay any longer. They turned around and left. Just when the 2 of them were about to leave the hall, Lil Ling Yun's voice rang out. Niet Tian, you're doing well. No matter how Vice Pavilion Master Wang deals with the matter between you and him, the Sky Sword Pavilion will fully support him. Lil Ling Yun's voice was extremely cold as it resounded in the hall. Niet Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Then he smiled faintly and replied, Thank you for telling me, Pavilion Master. I'll be waiting. Lil Ling Yun's words were equivalent to declaring war against Niet Tian. If Wang Yiping wanted to avenge her son, the Sky Sword Pavilion would also support her. That would be equivalent to killing Niet Tian. After leaving the Celestial Sword Pavilion, Lin Feng felt a bit disappointed and embarrassed. Brother Nya, what is going on between you and Vice Pavilion Master Wang? Lin Feng couldn't help but ask. Niet Tian didn't hide anything and told him everything that had happened in the Land of Blood Massacre. So that's how it is. Lin Feng was surprised. He would have never thought that Niet Tian was a cultivator from the 3,000 Small Worlds. Lin Feng didn't despise Niet Tian at all. Instead, he admired him even more. A cultivator from the 3,000 Small Worlds could become so strong. His natural abilities were terrifying. Lin Feng frowned when he heard about the enmity between Niet Tian and Wang Yiping. Things were going to be troublesome. Lil Ling Yun didn't believe Niet Tian, so he wouldn't do anything. Celestial Sword Pavilion would always be in danger. No, we have to tell the ancestor, said Lin Feng after remaining silent for a few seconds. The ancestor of the Celestial Sword Pavilion. Niet Tian's eyes twinkled when he heard Lin Feng mention the ancestor of the Celestial Sword Pavilion. He really wanted to see how strong the ancestor was. At that moment, the sky was getting brighter. Tian and Lin Feng didn't waste any time. They immediately went to the highest mountain in Celestial Sword Pavilion. Celestial Sword Pavilion was located in a mountain range. The highest mountain was called the Celestial Sword Peak. The ancestor of the Celestial Sword Pavilion practiced cultivation there. Tian knew that the ancestor of the Celestial Sword Pavilion hadn't shown his face in 100 years. That kind of old monster usually didn't show his face. Very quickly, two silhouettes appeared at the top of the Celestial Sword Peak. It was Tian and Lin Feng. Stop! When they were about to get close to the Celestial Sword Peak, two silhouettes rose up in the air and blocked their way. They were two old men in gray clothes. Their chi was extremely strong. They had both broken through to the 5th Tian level. Disciplinary elders. When Lin Feng saw the two people, he was stupefied. Immediately after, he shouted out their identities. Those two old men were the law enforcement elders of Celestial Sword Pavilion, Feng Mu and Feng Lin. Lin Feng, where are you going? Said Feng Mu in an ice-cold tone. He looked like a skinny man. His facial expression was deadly cold. Elder Feng Mu, I want to see the ancestor, said Lin Feng politely while bowing. See the ancestor, said the chubby Feng Lin, smiling coldly. Don't you know? Without the permission of the leader and the elders, nobody can get close to the Celestial Sword Peak. That's... Lin Feng was surprised. He really didn't know that there was such a rule. But the ancestor of the Celestial Sword Pavilion had been practicing cultivation for 100 years. Humph. Tian didn't care. He smiled and said, the leader sent you here, right? Even if the people of Celestial Sword Pavilion didn't allow other people to get close to the Celestial Sword Peak, they didn't need two law enforcement elders to guard it day and night. Besides, Tian and Lin Feng hadn't reached the Celestial Sword Peak yet, but Feng Mu and Feng Lin had already appeared. They were obviously waiting for them. If Lin Feng could think of finding the ancestor of Celestial Sword Pavilion, Lu Lingyun could obviously think of it too. Feng Mu and Feng Lin were surprised, but they didn't deny it. They said, so what? Nothing. Then, a wisp of coldness appeared at the corner of his eyes as he said, however, do you think you can stop us with just the two of you? How arrogant! Feng Mu and Feng Lin were stunned for a moment before they let out a furious roar. Wild sword intent burst forth from their bodies, and instantly, two powerful sword auras blossomed in the air. The pressure that gushed forth caused even the void to tighten. Brother Nya, don't attack, said Lin Feng. No matter what, they were elders of Celestial Sword Pavilion. They were his seniors. How could he attack them? Brother Lin, do you think they will let me go? Said Tian coldly. He glanced at Feng Mu and Feng Lin and said cold. Chapter 9:15. Feng Mu and Feng Lin's chi was ice cold. Even though they were trying to hide their killing intent, they couldn't hide it in front of Tian. It was obvious that they didn't just want to stop Tian and Lin Feng from approaching the Celestial Sword Peak. They wanted to kill them. Elders, your sword energy. Lin Feng was also surprised. He suddenly sensed something and asked, why is there a deadly energy? Lin Feng was obsessed with swords. He didn't know how evil people could be, but he could listen to the sword energy in the heart of the sword. Feng Mu and Feng Lin's sword energy was obviously filled with deadly energy. They wanted to kill Lin Feng and Tian. Lin Feng, you brought people to the Celestial Sword Peak. We are the law enforcement elders. We can't let you leave. Feng Mu's eyes flickered for a moment, but then he calmed down and roared with a righteous look. Lin Feng, you are a member of the Celestial Sword Pavilion. You should know the rules. If you are smart, you will obediently surrender and come with us to the law enforcement hall to receive your punishment. Otherwise, don't blame us for being merciless. Feng Lin smiled cold and shouted loudly. Tian frowned. Those two were really shameless. They obviously wanted to kill them, but they still made it sound so dignified. If Tian wasn't wrong, those two were either members of the Heavenly Demon Cult or Wang Yiping's subordinates. Elders, Lin Feng hesitated for a second. He was thinking whether he should go back with the law-enforcing elders or not. Just at this moment, Fong Mu and Fong Lin exchanged a glance before abruptly making their moves. Whoosh! Whoosh! Two deadly sword energies abruptly emerged. Their deadly chi was extremely dense, and it looked like two sharp blades attacking Lin Feng. Those two knew that Lin Feng was known as the Crazy Swordsman. He was the leader of the three swords of the Celestial Sword Pavilion. His strength was unfathomable, and they had to get rid of him first. Nie Tian's guess was right. Fong Mu and Fong Lin were Wang Yiping's subordinates. They had already been persuaded by Wang Yiping to surrender to the Heavenly Demon Cult. Wang Yiping promised that as long as the Heavenly Devil Cult took down the Heaven Sword Pavilion, the two of them would become the Vice Pavilion Masters of the Sword Pavilion, while Wang Yiping herself would become the Pavilion Master. The Heavenly Demon Cult was almost done with their plans, so how could they let Nie Tian ruin their plans at such a crucial moment? Lin Feng was still hesitating. He hadn't thought that the two law enforcement elders would suddenly attack him. By the time he reacted and wanted to make a move, it was already too late. Despicable. At the critical moment, a voice rang out. Then, two sword shadows appeared and blocked the two elders' sword essences. Bang! Boom! Lin Feng and Nie Tian both moved back. Fong Mu and Fong Lin were also startled, looking at Nie Tian in astonishment. They hadn't expected that this unassuming silver-haired martial artist in front of them would be able to easily block their attacks. Elders, what is the meaning of this? Lin Feng stabilized his body and looked glum. His entire body looked like a sharp sword. It was filled with an ice-cold chi. He was a member of the Celestial Sword Pavilion. Even if he had made a mistake, he wouldn't be killed. These two people had suddenly attacked him. They obviously wanted to kill him. Lin Feng, you colluded with outsiders and invaded the Celestial Sword Peak. You wanted to harm our ancestor. Shouldn't we kill you? Said Fong Mu. His facial expression was ice-cold. If you want to incriminate me, your mouth is full of sh*t, said Nie Tian while smiling mockingly. The guy was really shameless. He was lying through his teeth. You're slandering me. Even if Lin Feng didn't know what was going on, he could sense that something was wrong. He shouted furiously and released his sword energy, which was extremely sharp. Lin Feng, they're already members of the Heavenly Demon Cult. Don't be polite with them, said Nie Tianling coldly. His eyes were filled with killing intent. All right, nodded Lin Feng. He was a bit stupid, but he wasn't stupid. Fong Mu and Fong Lin's actions were too strange. It was enough to prove that they had a close relationship with the Heavenly Demon Cult. Lin Feng, do you want to attack us? Said Fong Mu coldly when he sensed Lin Feng's killing intent. You can kill us, but we can't kill you, shouted Nie Tianling. Fong Mu's shamelessness had already exceeded his limit. Even at that moment, he still wanted to use his status as a law enforcer to restrict Lin Feng. Lin Feng's eyes were burning like torches. He was fixedly staring at Fong Mu and slowly said, Are you really members of the Heavenly Demon Cult? Fong Mu's facial expression abruptly changed when he saw Lin Feng staring at him. He didn't reply and instead said, Lin Feng, you are a genius. The Heavenly Demon Cult has already destroyed the Xianyu Empire. The Celestial Sword Pavilion is next. I advise you to quickly abandon the dark side and join the Heavenly Demon Cult. Indeed, Fong Lin said when he saw that Fong Mu already knew who Lin Feng was. He then added, Lin Feng, with your natural abilities, if you join the Heavenly Demon Cult, you will definitely achieve great things. Maybe after Brother Wang, you will become the next head of the Celestial Sword Pavilion. We are doing this for your own good. You should. Bastard. Lin Feng didn't wait for Fong Lin to finish talking. Lin Feng suddenly shouted furiously and unsheathed his dragon cry sword. A terrifying sword energy soared into the sky, and the force of the atmosphere within 1,000 meters changed. What a powerful sword energy! Nie Tian sensed an extremely pure sword energy surging in the air. He couldn't help but be astonished. Lin Feng's strength was much more terrifying than he had imagined. Lin Feng, Fong Mu, and Fong Lin sensed a terrifying sword energy which made them shiver in fear. Their voices were shaking and they were trembling in fear. Nie Tian, brother, This is Celestial Sword Pavilion's business. Today I, Lin Feng, will help Celestial Sword Pavilion. Please don't get involved. Lin Feng was floating in the sky. He looked extremely calm and serene. He suddenly looked at Feng Mu and Feng Lin and said, "Attack." Lin Feng, don't think that just because you are the leader of the three swords that you are incredible. We are not afraid of you. Feng Mu and Feng Lin were astonished. They shouted at the same time and attacked at the same time. Their swords moved a kilometer in the air and oppressed Lin Feng. "Two rainbows penetrate the sun," said Lin Feng resolutely. His eyes were filled with deadly energy. In a flash, a terrifying sword chi whistled through the air and streaked across the horizon. Surprisingly, the sword chi split into two. It looked like two gigantic red dragons which were shaking the earth and sky. Boom! Boom! In the next moment, two muffled sounds spread in the air. Feng Mu and Feng Lin silhouettes were immediately propelled backwards. They looked like two gigantic stones that had been smashed into the ground. Two streaks of blood fell from the sky and created a cloud of dust. What a terrifying sword intent! Tian's eyes couldn't help but tremble at the sight of this, and he almost lost his voice. One sword attack, and Lin Feng had defeated Feng Mu and Feng Lin. Those two people had broken through to the 5th Tian level. They had broken through to the soul of a sword. Those two people were as strong as Lin Feng, but in front of Lin Feng, they couldn't even withstand one sword attack. Tian was astonished by Lin Feng's strength. He knew that Tian could also kill Feng Mu and Feng Lin with a single move. However, he would have to use powerful trump cards. He couldn't do it by relying on his sword arts alone. Chapter 9:16. At that moment, Tian suddenly remembered that Lu Shan had told him that Lin Feng had the opportunity to obtain the sword energies of the grave, but he had given up. Tian now understood why. It was because Lin Feng didn't care about the sword energies of the grave. Lin Feng put away his dragon sword and looked normal again, but he looked disappointed. Even if he knew who Feng Lin and Feng Mu were, they were still elders of Jiang'a. Lin Feng couldn't bear to attack them. Tian and Lin Feng's silhouettes flickered and they landed on the ground. Tian raised his hand and dispersed the dust. Feng Mu and Feng Lin appeared. They were covered in blood and lying in a gigantic crater. Lin Feng was too merciful. He hadn't killed Feng Mu and Feng Lin. He had only injured them. That meant that Lin Feng hadn't used his full strength. Feng Mu and Feng Lin weren't on the same level as Lin Feng. Tian looked at the two people on the ground. They were seriously injured. Even if they had the power of the celestial evolution technique, they would need at least 10 days to recover. Feng Mu was struggling to stand up. He looked at Lin Feng with fear in his eyes. Lin Feng didn't say anything. He looked at the celestial sword peak and said, "Brother Nya, let's go to the celestial sword peak." Tian slightly shook his head and sighed. "I'm afraid it won't be that simple." As soon as he finished speaking, a beam of sword chi shot through the air and bombarded a huge boulder 100 meters behind Tian and Lin Feng. The huge boulder instantly shattered into pieces. In the next moment, a silhouette landed on the ground. It was Lu Lingyun. "Bastard!" Lu Lingyun landed next to Feng Mu and Feng Lin and shouted, "Who injured them?" Lin Feng was stupefied. He took a step forwards and said indifferently, "It was me." "Lin Feng, are you trying to rebel?" Lu Lingyun was shaking and his voice was hoarse. "Did you injure them because they tried to stop you from entering the celestial sword peak?" Even though Lin Feng was strong, he always kept a low profile and focused on practicing his sword. Lu Lingyun didn't understand why he had injured an elder of the disciplinary committee. "Pavilion Master, they attacked me first." Lin Feng, at that moment, was extremely calm and indifferent. He said, "They already admitted that they were members of the celestial demon cult, and they even tried to persuade me to join them. Not killing them is already the biggest concession I can make." "Lord Pavilion Master, we didn't." Lin Feng hadn't even finished speaking when Feng Mu and Feng Lin started crying, "We are loyal and devoted to Celestial Sword Pavilion. We will never join the celestial demon cult." Lin Feng was the one who attacked the celestial sword peak, so we had no choice but to attack him. Pavilion Master, please investigate clearly. Lu Lingyun slightly waved his hand, indicating that they should stop talking. He turned around and looked at Lin Feng and Ye Tian. His eyes were filled with murder. He then said in a deep voice, Lin Feng, I don't know what Ye Tian did to you, but you would rather believe an outsider than a member of Celestial Sword Pavilion. Pavilion Master. Lin Feng was stupefied and said, I, Lin Feng, am not a person who doesn't understand right and wrong. Feng Mu and Feng Lin have already admitted that they are members of the Celestial Sword Pavilion. The Celestial Demon Cult can attack Celestial Sword Pavilion at any moment. This matter concerns the survival of Celestial Sword Pavilion. Whether you want to or not, I want to see the ancestor. What do you mean? When Lu Lingyun sensed that Lin Feng was becoming unyielding, he pulled a long face and said in a low voice, If I don't let you see the ancestor, are you going to kill me? I wouldn't dare. Lin Feng's eyes were twinkling. He then said, I am an orphan. Celestial Sword Pavilion took me in and raised me. Lin Feng is not an ungrateful person. But I want to see the ancestor. Nobody can stop me. Huh? When Lu Lingyun saw that Lin Feng was determined, he suddenly thought of something and was surprised. Lin Feng, what do you want to do? I want to walk on the path of sealing swords. Lin Feng's eyes were twinkling with determination. The path of sealing swords. The path of sealing swords. Lu Lingyun and Ye Tian said at the same time. One was surprised, and the other was confused. Ye Tian didn't know what the path of sealing swords was, but when he looked at Lu Lingyun's facial expression, he knew that it was a terrifying thing. Nonsense. After Yu Lingyun recovered from his shock, his face darkened as he roared. The path of sealed swords is a forbidden ground of the Sky Sword Pavilion. For thousands of years, no one has ever walked the path of sealed swords. You are playing with your life. Huh? Ye Tian was stupefied again. The more Lu Lingyun said, the more curious he was. What exactly was the path of sealing swords? Lu Lingyun was extremely excited, but Lin Feng looked determined and said, If I can walk on the path of sealing swords, the ancestor will let me see him. I won't allow you to leave, shouted Lu Lingyun furiously. Lin Feng was the pride of Celestial Sword Pavilion. He couldn't let such a genius die on the path of sealing swords. Leader. Lin Feng looked at Lu Lingyun and said, Celestial Sword Pavilion has a rule. Nobody can walk on the path of sealing swords. Even if you're the leader, you have no right to stop me from walking on the path of sealing swords. Lin Feng. Lu Lingyun was stupefied and looked extremely embarrassed. He then said, Do you know what will happen if you fail on the path of sealing swords? My heart will be sealed, and I will never be able to practice sword cultivation again, replied Lin Feng calmly. My heart will be sealed? When Ye Tian heard Lin Feng's reply, he was surprised. It was the first time he had heard of such a thing. What kind of mysterious place was the path of sealing swords? Surprisingly, it could seal a cultivator's heart. Since you already know, why do you still want to leave? Lu Lingyun sighed. He really couldn't bear to see Lin Feng die on the path of sealing swords. I will definitely walk on the path of sealing swords, and I will definitely see the ancestor, replied Lin Feng indifferently. He looked calm and determined. Lu Lingyun looked at Lin Feng. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't let Lin Feng see the ancestor. Besides, he could see that even if Lin Feng hadn't done what had happened that day, he would still choose to walk on the path of sealing swords. Lin Feng, have you made up your mind? Asked Lu Lingyun after a long time. Yes, nodded Lin Feng and said, Your Excellency, let's get ready to open the path of sealing swords. Lu Lingyun knew that there was no turning back, so he just nodded. Ye Tian and Lin Feng immediately left. Lu Lingyun took Feng Mu and Feng Lin and left. A short time after, Ye Tian and Lin Feng appeared in front of the Celestial Sword Palace. They were waiting for the path of sealing swords to open. BC. At that moment, a vast and boundless sound spread through the atmosphere. Immediately after, a myriad of lights descended from the sky. It looked like stars falling from the sky. It was dazzling and dazzling. That's... Ye Tian frowned. He could sense a vast and boundless sword energy coming from the sky. At the moment when Yetion was surprised, all the lights gathered together in the sky and condensed into a gigantic sword. It was a few thousand meters long, and its light dashed to the skies. Everything within a few hundred meters was enveloped by a terrifying sword energy.